Honourable Member, Mr. Sherrod Duncan, to make his contribution. Honourable Member, your clock starts at 2:15:43.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I wish to lend my voice and stand resolutely with my colleagues of the parliamentary opposition as we interrogate Budget 2023 presented by the Senior Minister with Responsibility for Finance within the Office of the President, Dr. Ashley Singh. This budget, of course, Mr. Speaker, is themed improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. The Honourable Member says that this budget is supposed to be capturing the essence of simultaneous attention being paid to both the immediate issues and irritants of the day, as well as the longer-term investments needed to be secured, the well-being of all Guyanese people well into the future. Who knew, Mr. Speaker, that the Honourable Member had such jokes? Who knew? By the time you get to the end of the budget, Mr. Speaker, you understand why Dr. Singh, the Honourable Member, was so heavily medicated during the initial presentation 2 Mondays ago. The average Guyanese, however, is not so lucky with fast access to drugs. As any visit to a health center would inform you, Mr. Speaker, 3 years on, 4 budgets later, the shelves at the health centers are bare. Mr. Speaker, I disagree with the tenor of Budget 2023. I disagree with the timbre of Budget 2023. I disagree with the economic underpinnings and the outlook of Budget 2023. I definitely disagree with the political philosophy of Budget 2023, and I most definitely Budget 2023 is a contradiction. Budget 2023. It is a big projects budget. But we have no issue there with big projects. But the PPP's history of big projects is a sordid one. Forgive me if we're not backflipping on this side over big projects. It is the accountant par excellence, Alan Gulsiran, who was taking us through the failed projects we've had as a nation. Incidentally, all of them belong to the PPP. Failed project, Shari Jagan International Airport, $138 million. Skeldon Sugar Factory, a big failed project. Started out at $150 million, ran up to $200 million. This is Alan Gulsiran writing for Starbuck News. The one laptop per family. Another big failed project, according to the learned accountant, Mr. Speaker. And then we come to the fiber optic cable. And he didn't only tell us it was a failed project, he told us why. He said nothing was achieved, but the country saddled with debt. Starbuck News, April 19, 2022. Alan Gulsiran said that these projects failed completely to deliver in terms of their objectives, their outputs, their outcomes and impacts, thereby encumbering Guyana with public debt to the tune of $115 million, with little or nothing to show of the expenditure incurred. So, Mr. Speaker, we apologize if we're not backflipping on this side, the big projects laid out in this Budget 2022. Budget 2023. Thank you. It is not a good budget, Mr. Speaker. One commentator stated that it is not an economist's budget, it is a accountant's budget. And after hearing some of my honorable colleagues on the other side, Mr. Speaker, you get the impression it's not only the parliament, you get the impression it's the only parliamentary opposition that has issues with an otherwise brilliant budget as stated by the Honorable Member Binja Prasad. But the independent commentator, Mr. Speaker, posited, notwithstanding, and I quote, the budget is a one-year program of the government. It should be informed by a larger vision of the government. It should be anchored in the government's national development strategy and at least a medium-term fiscal plan. Regrettably, the commentator says, the government does not have a national development strategy in Mr. Tether Budget 2023. Further contending, the commentator says, the International Monetary Fund has emphasized the importance of such a framework, the fiscal policy, to anchor such a budget. It is the 2022 Article 4 of that consultation report of the IMF, in which the IMF had recommended that budgets are set within a medium-term macroeconomic framework. And further, it was the Inter-American Development Bank which offered similar advice, Mr. Speaker. Its June 2018 policy brief had underscored that the magnitude of the country's oil revenues not be understated and that the work should commence on a rule-based fiscal framework. I think what the commentator really meant is that budget 2023, Mr. Speaker, has no soul. The budget simply has no soul. Mr. Speaker, I did manage to ask an accountant his own impression of the commentator's refrain. It is not an accountant's budget. It is not an economist's budget, but rather an accountant's budget. And that accountant says that is an insult to accountants everywhere. Mr. Speaker, the great poet William Butler Yeats wrote in his epic ballad, The Second Coming, much like this dispensation of the People's Progressive Party. The words ring true today as they ever were. Things fall apart that the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the world. Mr. Speaker, these words are prophetic, and as I said, as relevant as they ever were. Things fall apart because the center cannot hold. Things fall apart that the center cannot hold. In Guyana 2023, Mr. Speaker, things fall apart because the center just cannot hold. And mere anarchy is loosed upon our world. The Honorable Accountant is finding out the hard way that throwing money at problems don't mean you're solving them. And in 2020, we threw $329 billion at the problems we have. And then we mopped up with a $17.4 billion supplementary. Those were thrown at some of the problems we have as a nation. And yet, Mr. Speaker, things are still falling apart because the center just cannot hold. In 2021, we threw $383.1 billion at some of our issues, and then a supplemental of $21.3 billion and another of $26 billion, respectively. And those problems yet persist, Mr. Speaker, because things are still falling apart. Why? The center just cannot hold. 2022, $552.9 billion. And then we top that up with a $44.7 billion supplemental budget, followed by another $47.3 billion. And here we are, things falling apart. Are they worse in 2023? By this time, you would think the government will understand throwing money alone at the problems will not fix them, will not solve them, Mr. Speaker. You all remember Dr. Ashley Singh, noting how persistent these issues are, that bedeviled him, resorts to a new categorization of these troubles. Irritants of the day, he says, because he started with them in 2020, and yet they persist. And now we categorize them as irritants of the day. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, we have a similar categorization for the government. Irritants of the day. The Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh does not realize that things fall apart because the center cannot hold. And in Guyana, Mr. Speaker, the center is not holding. Mr. Speaker, the center is not holding. It is rotten. And that is why it is not holding. It is wicked, it is stink, and it's dirty. That's why it's not holding. Take housing, for instance. And this issue of squatting. Take housing, and this issue of squatting, Mr. Speaker. If our brothers and sisters in charity can go from squatters on that land to legal landowners, then our brothers and sisters at Caneview Mucker residents, the Caneview Mucker residents can go from squatters to landowner of that very same land. But the center in Guyana in 2023 is not holding. If Pigeon Island squatters can go from ownership, from squatting to owners and ownership of their land, then the success squatters, Mr. Speaker, must have the same opportunities. We have different strokes for different folks in Guyana because the center, Mr. Speaker, is not holding. And if the squatters of Iflux Sideline Dam and Tushen Railway Embankment can receive their land titles, and the squatters of Amelia's Ward have their houses torn down, how can we say the center is holding? After 25 years of the PPP in housing, it's about time for a coherent policy on housing, or things will keep falling apart, and the center will definitely not hold. Mr. Speaker, let me detain you here for a short while on the Honorable Dr. Ashley's phrase, irritants of the day. 4 budgets later, 3 years in, the Honorable Member Dr. Ashley Singh said this means ensuring decent quality community infrastructure, including community roads, drainage and irrigation structures, Mr. Speaker. We have had enough of these here today, gone tomorrow roads. That 100 million Burma Road was here one day, gone the next. They're still battling to understand Carifesta Avenue. It was there one day, gone the next. Silvertongue Road in Linden was there one day, gone the next. Hararuni Access Road was there one day, gone the next, Mr. Speaker. It's enough. And it's time we stop giving these contracts to friends, family, and favorites. Producing these here today, gone tomorrow roads, Mr. Speaker. And let us bring back qualified contractors and get on with the job of building this nation. Irritants of the day, Mr. Speaker. Crime is all about overtaking us. 4 biggest budgets later. Criminal elements operate with impunity. Where is the crime prevention?
Okay, Honorable Member, you've been testing my patience. You used the word wicked, and I didn't want to correct the young chief whip for the opposition when he said it was not there. And then there are words, you get back your time. There are words which, if in the speaker's opinion, right? Yesterday, I don't know if you were here, I spoke about, I consider imputing the word giving contracts. That was the second one. And you just used criminal. So I now ask that those words be struck and you continue to observe the parliamentary practice. You went back again. If I say you can't use it, you can't even try to explain. You don't use it.
I withdraw the truth, Mr. Speaker. I withdraw the truth. Where's the crime prevention plan, Mr. Speaker, that was promised in the extract of the People's Progressive Party manifesto, 4 biggest budgets later? Al-Madini supermarket, right in Kitty, around the corner from where we are, was robbed twice last week. Where's the crime prevention plan? The Honorable Minister Ben seemed asleep at the wheels. Where is the crime prevention plan? Choke and rob bandits have returned unchecked, pouncing any time of the day, anywhere on unsuspecting victims, Mr. Speaker. And of course, Guyana seemed to be characterized by the wild, wild west, people being shot under dubious circumstances by police, Cecil Sampat, Sherwin Philly, Peter Headley, Oren Boston are just a few of the names that come to mind. And then it seems as though whenever this administration comes back into power, it seems cocaine comes back. September 5th, 2020, 2 planes found with cocaine, Region 7. November 5th, 2020, Belgian police seized 11.5 tons of cocaine, a shipment from Guyana. May 21st, 2021, a foreign aircraft with over 100 pounds of cocaine found in Region 6, East Berbice Quarantine. You had also in July 15, 2021, a burnt out illegal plane found in the trail of Bisharuni, also suspected to be involved in narcotics. You had August 14, 2021, Caribbean Airlines plane intercepted at Miami with cocaine emanating from Guyana. November 4, 2021, 2 foreign men, a Colombian and a Venezuelan, nabbed with a small plane with cocaine. December 1, 2021, the law enforcement in the Netherlands intercepted more than 1,100 pounds of cocaine in a shipment that emanated from Guyana. January 20th, 2022, Guyana flagged 3 containers, but this one's different now. Arms and ammunition to the tune of $5 million in Senegal, in Dakar, Senegal, emanating again from Guyana. Mr. Speaker, one would get the impression the national flag carrier is cocaine.
Honorable Member, January 26, 2023 at 2:32:08, you need an extension.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I do move if the honourable member can be given 10 minutes to conclude his presentation. But it's your discretion, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Member, Mr. Duncan, you have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, gracious Speaker. People are being gunned down in the streets of the wild, wild West Guyana with impunity. Delon Josiah, just recently, Anthony Charles, just recently in Durban Street, Rondell Haynes, Peter Gonzalez, we have Delron McKenzie, Devane McLennan, Odinga Anthony Haywood, Jaleel Lowe, Ricardo Fagundes, Sion Landon, Renald Umar Smith, Euclid De Silva, Daniel Fraser, and Shanika Ford are just a few of the names since August 2nd, 2020, who have been gunned down. If the Honorable Minister Robeson Ben is not up to the task, let us send him off to spend some time with his family, for this posture of strategic patience with criminal elements cannot continue, Mr. Speaker.
I'll have to do like a school teacher. Do you see where you went wrong? I actually withdraw the word. Thank you. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
But let us arrest crime now and protect our citizens. Things are falling apart, Mr. Speaker, and the center just cannot hold. Mr. Speaker, things fall apart. As I said, the center is not holding. Mr. Speaker, we learned very early as students at law the Latin phrase, audi alteram partem. This translates into hear the other side. It takes a certain kind of maturity to meaningfully hear the other side. We don't have to agree on all points. I want to believe that we all generally want the development of this country, Mr. Speaker. But we disagree on how we can get there. In 2020, Honorable Member Dr. Ashley Singh had a plan for prosperity, protecting our people in a COVID-19 environment. 4 biggest budgets later, COVID needs $2 billion now. How is that working out for us? Maybe we should listen to the other side, Mr. Speaker. In 2021, economic dynamism and resilience was the aim. Well, 8% inflation has now eaten that up, folks, from 0.9 in 2020, decimating those utopian hopes. In 2022, Mr. Speaker, the intent was steadfast against all challenges, resolute in building one Guyana. Today, the nation stands more divided than ever. Maybe we should listen to the other side. President Barack Obama, in his first inaugural speech in 2009, speaking to an equally divided nation, said, those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent.
Honorable member, I'm not allowing the use of that word, and I ask that you continue to refrain from introducing words that we don't use in this house.
President Barack Obama, Mr. Speaker, in his first inaugural speech in 2009, speaking to an equally divided nation, said to those who cling to power through beep beep and deceit and silencing of dissent, know that you're on the wrong side of history, but that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your fist, Mr. Speaker. That unclenched fist could begin to open, Mr. Speaker, by simply beginning to listen to the other side. And not just the parliamentary opposition. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, Starbuck News in its editorial of January 23, 2023 notes that with the bountiful good news, there will inevitably be cautionary tales about the way forward. The oil bonanza continue to show early features of both the Dutch disease and the resource curse, Mr. Speaker. The man and woman in the street, the editorial says, continue to be at the mercy of the market forces that have pumped up the cost of living, particularly since oil production began. Increased demand in the food sector associated with the oil and gas industry have driven up prices for basic items, and nothing that the government has done since its term began has had a lasting effect on easing this burden. In the 10th installment of the Starbuck News Cost of Living series of that day, Mr. Speaker, of that day, the newspaper reports, ordinary folks have set out in excruciating details how difficult it has become to make ends meet. And finally, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude.
Well, beep, beep, your time is up, but I'll allow you to conclude.
Thank you very much, gracious Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Rama McCray analysis, focus on budget, National Budget 2023 is required reading, at least for anyone desirous of hearing the other side. The publication states, Mr. Speaker, despite the PPPC's manifesto commitment for better contract administration and renegotiation, the government is now so accommodating of the oil companies that the country's already weak laws are completely ineffective. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the editorial, the analysis says, indeed, the failure to increase the 2023 budgetary allocation for the Environmental Protection Agency, its slothfulness in updating the 1986 laws or establishing an independent petroleum commission seems motivated by a desire for control and secrecy in government. Control and secrecy in government. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the publication states, one feature of this administration has been its increasing reliance on cash grants as a poverty cushioning measure, but the government's stubborn refusal to raise the national minimum wage. It seems that for some long time into the future, cash grants will be the principal tool of poverty reduction. That's the world's fastest growing economy. Now the world's fastest growing economy, Mr. Speaker, is sustained by one of the lowest minimum wage in the world, sits uncomfortably with each other, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, things are falling apart in this country because the center just cannot hold. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I invite the Honorable Minister of Local Government to make his contribution. Honorable Minister, at 2:39:40.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think after speaking after Sherrod Duncan, the honorable member, I have the privilege of saying the opposition has just fallen apart. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, as I was listening to Mr. Duncan, I was contemplating what is it that I have to say during the course of this debate. So I said a silent prayer. And I was told just moments ago, fear not, the PPP is here to stay. Fear not, the PPP is here to stay. Mr. Chairman, over the last few days, we have heard quite a lot of arguments on this budget. But I think that when I listen to what has transpired on the opposite side of this House, their arguments are filled with paradoxes. Just now, Mr. Sherrod Duncan said, Honorable Member Sherrod Duncan said that he spoke out against cash grants, but at the same time was reading or quoting in support of cash grants. Many of his comrades on the other side wanted to share the oil money out too. And then they spoke out against the Dutch disease. So I don't understand how to configure the context of their criticism of budget 2023. But I could tell you that this budget, a lot of hard work went into. A lot of hard work. Unfortunately, you didn't want to participate in the preparation of this budget. But what we have done over thousands of hours, thousands of meetings, led by His Excellency the President, we have gone to practically every single village of this country, across every single demographic, and we've gotten the support of every single person, and in some cases, some of you as well. And I'll tell you why in a few moments, why some of you support this budget, but publicly you are disagreeing because of your, you don't understand the nuances of the budget. So yes, fair indeed. They're fair to speak publicly against the Little League values of their leader. So Mr. Chairman, when this budget was coined, we did a lot of hard work. And the context of this budget, the policy framework of this budget rests solidly on a One Guyana platform, irrespective of the pernicious language of members of the opposition on race baiting, against poor people, their vicious attacks against Amerindian development. We are going to steadfastly work on developing this country. And that is why our prayer, and my prayer especially, I've been guided, fear not, the PPPC is here to stay. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, the budget encapsulates a number of things. It is pro-poor, always pro-poor. Since 1946, when we started to become an entity and take life to this point, we have always been a pro-poor organization. Our values, our guiding principles have always been pro-poor. So when we spend money for poor people in villages. That is what we do. And most of this budget will be spent in villages across Guyana, and including the wards of the different municipalities across this entire country. Listening intently to the criticisms of the AP and UFC, especially some of the regionally based MPs, saying that nothing is there for regional development. Outside of the sectoral ministries, the 10 regions of Guyana will spend in excess of $68 billion. $68 billion. More than 33 billion will go towards regional health. More than 13 billion will go towards regional education. And more than 17 billion will go towards regional agriculture. Who are the people that live in these communities? More than 35 billion will go towards Amerindian development across the budget. Who live in these areas? But they will never be able to stand and listen. But I'll quote from our good friend, a good friend of democracy, the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves. Take your licks like a man. Take your licks like a man. But of course, they'll be unable to stand the truth because this is what we stand for. We stand for speaking the truth. So when this budget was designed, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just designed with the paradoxes of the AP and UAFC. We actually listened to people. We spent a lot of time across many hours, like I said, day and night, in treacherous circumstances in many cases, just so that we can get the values of our people in budget 2023. It is, for me, as Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, I've had the honor over the last 2.5, going to 3 years, serving people across this country. And a lot of these issues that are catered for, that are addressed in this budget, are issues that are alive. But the opposition will not understand that because they're never amongst people. They're never there listening to anyone. They're never, because the budget does not speak to personal aggrandizement. And as I speak of personal aggrandizement, Mr. Speaker, you know, there's this famous Jamaican reggae artist called Popcorn. And Popcorn said, numbers don't lie. But I know they're listening to me. And they have, Mr. Speaker, staff of the government that sit on the other side. They claim that this budget doesn't help public servants, the working class, poor people. But they will not tell you that the Secretary General of the Guyana Teachers Union, a non-qualified mistress or Mrs., in addition to a parliamentary stipend, nearly $250,000 a month, also earns as a non-qualified teacher an additional $213,000 per month. They wouldn't tell you. They wouldn't tell you. There's another teacher that spoke about the development on the East Coast in Haslington Grove, NDC. Earns again nearly $250,000 a month in this parliament, but also earns as an HM over $282,000 per month at one of our nursery schools in Georgetown. And then there's another one that teaches at St. Joseph's High School. Earns again here over nearly $250,000 a month. And then as a teacher at St. Joseph's High, earn $243,000.
Good afternoon to all of you who joined our afternoon segment of this program. We've continued our broadcast as we bring you the opposition side of the Budget 2023 debates. We just heard Mr. Sherrod Duncan, MP Sherrod Duncan on the floor. And we're going to have him here in the studio. We don't waste any time. If you're listening there to Dharmlal again, you're not missing anything.
Nothing much. Nothing much.
But we're going to bring Sherrod into the studio. Sherrod, welcome to our program as we
Thanks for having me. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Right.
A fantastic job. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Now let's jump in. Let's jump in.
I know our viewers had a little shot of the Dharmlal speech just now, and he made a statement as soon as he came on. He said, after coming after Sherrod Duncan, he's not sure what he should be saying here. And I was shocked by the statement, and not shocked, in between, because as the minister responsible for a ministry, when you come to these budgets, is to tell the people what your sector is going to be doing and how will it benefit the people.
Correct.
And for you to be bothered because somebody come before you and tell the truth, it speaks volume to what we have been seeing in the debate for this entire period. This is the 4th day, and we have consecutively seen that the members of the government have not told the people what they will be doing. And I mean, you put some licks in them on that note. Let's talk about that.
That is a very important observation. It was quite surprising. You had a very few of the ministers of government who could come and say what they're doing. Priya Manichan, we got our faults with her politically, but she was one of them who seemed to know what she wanted to say. You had very, very few. The majority of them, spent a lot of time looking backwards, and even in looking backward, the information was still very jaundiced and was just propaganda. Was just propaganda.
Here. We're not in parliament.
On parliamentary words.
Yeah.
But I know that you focus some part of your presentation on the public security issue. Calling out Ben. Let us dig in on that. Your general assessment. I know X amount of money would have gone to security. Your general assessment of Ben's performance in 2022.
People could have done, and we did it, more with less. We did more with less. You gotta be afraid to step out your house, and you don't even have to step out. Then what's coming inside? That's where we are, and you see instance after instance. It's a cell phone age. People catching these, and you got the CCTV cameras as well. These choke and rob guys on a daily basis. I mean, this thing is out of control now, and there's no response from the government. There is none. So you talk about the daily crimes. You talk about the daily fires that we have, and it's just too much. It's just too much, and I think we need a very energetic Minister of Home Affairs who can hit the ground running. Ben, for all intents and purposes, got a little cane and hobbling through some of these issues, and we don't need that, especially with the amount of problems we're going to inherit now becoming an oil economy. These problems are going to grow tenfold because we're not dealing with ourselves, we're dealing with the influx of migrants from all over the place, and we're already seeing some of the effects of that. So you really need to be on top of crime.
On that very note, one of the things in his speech, he said, he talked a lot about the cost of living, etc. And I was wondering if he was going to go ahead and give us the link between the issue of cost of living and why the crime is high. Because this is, I don't think the government is willing to accept part of why every time they're in power, we have these issues. It's because the way they treat the people and the economy.
Correct. And one of the dangers they have is how out of touch they are, because they're in an economy that is not performing well. And whether they do well or not, they still get a big salary at the end of the month. That is not the average Guyanese. The average Guyanese salary has not gone up. And if it has gone up, it's not by much. So 7% on a minister's salary to an average Guyanese salary, 7% of 1.2 million, that's going to be a lot of money. Right? The ordinary man don't feel that. So when they go to the shop, if something costs 2 cents more, they're not feeling that. The benefits plus the salary. They're not feeling, they're not living in this economy. But the average person, that's why I didn't want too much to have my own voice captured. That's why we use so many sources. And to say here the other side is not just us, the other side is Starbucks News, it's Kaichur News, all of them saying the same thing. Things are tough and people are hurting in this economy, and nothing that they're doing since they came into office now has been able to address that problem.
Yeah. When you were at university, Guyana, studying law, I'm younger than you, but I was at the university at the same time. I was in Dr. Jonas's class, English class, and there's a book, Things Fall Apart. Chinua Achebe.
Yeah, it comes out to the same poem. It was
Right.
Yeah.
Things Fall Apart. It's a book or a poem? I might be getting
it's a book. The book is titled Things Fall Apart, but it is inspired by the poem.
By the poem.
Yeah.
Right.
Inspired.
And so when I heard you say that, I said that's quite an apt explanation or characterization of what is happening under this government. And speaker after speaker would have pointed to where the economy would have collapsed. And it is falling apart.
Troy Durden did a great job of that.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're talking to us about how this economy has collapsed in all of these sectors, walking us through that. They want to bury their heads in the sand. They say they don't talk about sugar at all. They can talk about all of the pluses, sugar and rice and so on. That anyway, could you imagine? They're telling us they have a good production of chicken, but eggs and so on, low production. Even the chicken don't want to produce in this economy. That is where we are. But Guyanese are really, really hurting in this economy. They are hurting because they don't know how to get by when things are going up. You go in the shop now. You used to be when you go in the shop, them guys used to give you 2 bins with a change or something. Them guys watching like, what are you waiting for?
Nothing.
What are you waiting for? Charlie Jagger, and I forget that as part of my presentation, said that, we will have some sweets for the kids. You can't afford the sweets now. That's where we are. And it's the paradox of plenty that our colleagues have been talking about. You got this oil bonanza, they can talk about the GDP and all of that and where we are with that. But yet, people can't get by. Why is that? You can tell me, okay, you're going to say parliamentary opposition, we bias through propaganda, this and that. But you tell me, Starbucks News, now join we, Kaichur News, now join us, all these different columnists, Raman McCray, Focus on Budget, 2023, suddenly coming to the opposition column, suddenly came into the opposition columns, and that is why I use that Latin phrase, audi alteram partem, listen to the other side. You see, they believe that all of the answers reside in them. Repose in them, all of the answers. Unless you want to listen to the other side, Rani and Shinika, I'm certain it's a part in your life you thought you had the best idea. And then somebody else said, why not try this or think about this? And then you say, oh my God, I never thought about that. You see, they can't learn nothing from nobody else. I'm not even talking about the parliamentary opposition. Anything that didn't emanate with them, they see it as a criticism.
And every MP that has sit here, we say it every time we sit down. We hear the same thing because there is lack of plan.
Yeah.
And major to any form of development and policy implementation is consultation.
Yeah.
And this government refused to do that. Consultation is where you get ideas from other people outside of yourself. And to be able to cater for the people, and that's what you're saying there. There is no form of consultation under this government. They just do as they please, no matter where the chips fall.
Yep. And that is why you have had so many failed projects again, because of this notion that all of the answers reside in them. Who tell them we wanted a Skeldon sugar factory to be modernized? As a matter of fact, some of the banks were arguing against it and to use that money to something more productive. But you can't talk with these guys, or else you're deemed as a naysayer, one of the critics and that kind of stuff. Who tell them, this whole one laptop per family thing was the way to go at that point? They've come up with these ideas, and then, to make some money, some quick money for themselves, friends, family, and favorites, right? And then our experience has been failure after failure after failure. I mean, some of this stuff is just criminal. Look at the cost we got to pay to go across the Berbice Bridge. I mean, the average person really and truly probably coming over once per month now. You're gonna really need to be on this other side to come over. It is so exorbitant. And that bridge is built a little while now.
Mr. Patterson,
Well, they got it
when
correct.
he was there,
Correct.
who helped to,
Correct.
shoulder some of that.
Correct.
I have two issues that I want you to address. I mean, current president of Brazil, in his first term when he was president, said something that I hold dear, is that the key to being a public official is fixing the obvious. And it seems as if the PPP often overlook the obvious. The opposition would have brought many motions to the parliament for us to discuss the cost of living. That was shut down.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So there is that. And there is this idea that the average man in the street, what can he or she look to in this budget and say, hey, this was really beneficial to me? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, the obvious thing here is cost of living.
Yeah.
And so the average person is right now looking at the television thinking, but yeah, that really can give me some money, more money in my pocket. How do you respond to that?
It's a silliness you keep hearing about, yes, it's cost of living, but it's not us alone. But there are few countries that got the oil wealth that we got. Very, very few. And it seems to have been so, it was Providence, almost. We didn't foresee in 2020 not only COVID, but all of this stuff with inflation and cost of living and all that. And we got this bonanza just in time. But how have they been spending it? How have they been spending it? That is the tragedy. That is the real tragedy. And it's the missed opportunities along the way. During COVID, to have to see, us as a country, how we set backward, going village to village, dragging around suitcases of money.
Yeah.
This should have been a time to push people to get online, right? To get a bank card, to
And
get,
it would have been easy to know what's happening, accountability.
exactly. But you see, if you do that, you can get some numbers, you might get a snapshot of the electorate and so on, the amount of people who register and all of that.
And
You
you
might
can
do
track the
that.
funds.
Might be like that. Yeah.
You can't track
You
the
can
funds.
track the
I think
funds.
That's the biggest part.
Yeah.
They don't want us to track the funds.
Yeah, there is that. So we're at the point of plenty, and yet we're hungry. And I think it's Bob Marley who said it best: we're belly full, but we're hungry. And they're selling dreams here. You can't carry it to the shop. You can't carry it to the shop. We got the biggest GDP. The shop man looking for the money. Or he might start touching you, unlawfully or something like that. Push you to wash some wares at the back or something like that. We got the money, but only some people getting it. Only some people getting it. Notice we ain't talking about artificial island. I ain't hear one of them boys talk about this artificial island yet. Who own it?
They don't bring anything to the table of that.
No. Some things come up and some things don't. And that's why, what we do is so important. Continually bringing our people valid, credible information, because you're seeing this on NCN, right? You're seeing this on DPI, state-owned and being funded by our taxpayers' dollars and our oil money as well. But you wouldn't see this. And that's why what we're doing here is so important. But we got to stop this, because this is madness. If we continue at this pace, this is madness. This is largely ceremonial, what we're doing here, because they aren't listening. They aren't listening. They're going to pass that budget whether you like it or not. They ain't changing at that. They're on crossing a T. Yes, and you said it best. We can have we say, and they can have our way. And then they want to say it's one Guyana, it's democracy, it's transparency, it's good governance, and worse, they want to put a stamp of inclusivity on this here.
What is also important is that we articulate to the people who are looking a position, a recommendation, a suggestion as the government in waiting. So we don't like to let our MPs leave without giving us some sort of idea of the way forward with all of the wealth that is coming. Some of your suggestions on how we as a country can turn a corner.
I think we have to continually put to the people out there a better plan. All right? And I think you don't have to go far to know that we can do a better job. Could you imagine being in government for 5 years, no tear gas and fire, no rubber bullets never hit nobody, the water cannon never had to come out, right? You never saw Himax and excavators breaking down people's homes and all of that, because of our socio-economic construct. We have squatters with us. We understand it is illegal, but the construct in which we find ourselves is one in which we have 100+ squatting settlements. Now, I heard a woman say on a piece of land up the East Bank, she's been squatting here for 17 years. 17. Clearly, we inherited her. Right? We inherited her. We're going to fix that problem. It's not a problem that's going to be fixed in 5 years. If you got 30,000 people who are squatting, you can't fix them overnight. You can't. Right? But we got to keep at it. And together, see, again, they believe they have all the answers. So they're listening. They're listening. And that's why we keep running into these headaches over and over and over. You can't tell them nothing on crime, yet crime going where it's going. Their desires of sugar, yet sugar going where it's going. You see? But we got to continue to put forward that plan that says we know what we're doing. We try to right size this. We got to reinvent the wheel. Barbados coming out of sugar in 2025. We plunging in sugar. You know, we just plunged $30 billion in sugar since 2022.
Yeah.
A failing industry. They're not failing. You see, we did them a favor, but they said their desires, they can bring back sugar to date. Not one sugar estate has reopened, but the higher 1,400 people. You see, rice, they said they know about rice. We know about farming. We're rice there. We spoke about the chickens, you know, we spoke about the eggs, poultry, production, and you name it, sector after sector. Health.
Black belly sheep though.
Health. You know, you can't afford to tie the black belly sheep, the Brahmin bull. You got the big black chicken. It's full animal farm, you know. Full animal farm. And none of them working. I saw some of the black belly sheep that these people took from Barbados. My God, it's a shame. I don't think those people can take back those sheep. You know, I don't know if we got any left because you know the thief, not everything now. You know, you see an ambulance pass by you, it might not be a patient, it could be mutton passing, it could be something, you know. But that's the country we're living in. And we got to do better. And there's a brighter day because we have the skill in this country. We have the expertise. And even if we don't, we got the money to procure it and move this country forward. But these folks here, tried and tested.
Right. Well, that's a good note. Folks, we've been listening to Sherrod Duncan, who I must congratulate you, managed to get through your speech without calling them jagabats.
Very tempted.
You were tempted.
I was very tempted.
And of course, welcome back.
Yes, thank you, folks.
Right,
thank you,
folks. We're going to continue our program. Let's take a live look at what's happening on the floor as we follow budget debates 2023. Darmlal is still there. I think he has a few more minutes to wrap up.
And then we will be seeing on the floor from the opposition end, Ms. Annette Ferguson is to come next on the opposition side of the debate.
Yeah, so let's pull up our list full screen, let the audience get an opportunity to see what's happening there. And then, of course, we have a few others to go before the end of the day. Right.
We have, after Ms. Ferguson on our end, we have Dineshwar Jai Prashad. He is the regional MP.
Yes, and then we have Mr. Sinclair.
A little distraction. The regional MP for region number 6, and he will be talking to us. And the last speaker on our side for today will be Mr. Richard Sinclair, Member of Parliament, and I do believe he's region number 8, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Now, last evening we had a wonderful presentation by our parliamentarian who gave our maiden speech in Parliament last evening. Newest MP on the floor, and you know she went in there just beating left, right, and center. Welcome to the program, Miss Beverly Alert. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Nice to be here.
Great.
So let's talk about last night. I mean, before you got into your actual debate, you went in there firing on the misinformation that has been spreading in regards to the National Two-Show Councils and the things they're trying to say about our indigenous people. Could we talk about that?
Shanika, that is what we're getting a lot in the National Assembly coming from a lot of misinformation, a lot of distortion. Their brand of history, and PPP is very good at that, rewriting history. And take independence. You hear about Chedi Channel being the father of the nation.
Yeah.
But in reality, all the photographs you see, all the evidence you have, is a Forbes Burnham coming back with an instrument to say we're going to be a free people. That is history. But the PPP always rewriting history. And so, going back there again, part of the agreement that Guyana would become an independent nation stipulated lands for the Amerindian people. It is enshrined in that Annex C. And they came and they said how the government of the APNU AFC or the government of the PNC before failed to provide titles and lands for Amerindian people. Such a load of blatant untruths. Right? And if you Google is probably the best invention ever. If you Google it, you would find quickly that under Prime Minister Burnham, President Hoyt, how much land was allocated, I think about 11% of Guyana's land mass, or 11%, 11.8, I think, of Guyana's land mass was given to the Amerindian people by way of title. And then President Granger came in, and he gave, I think, another 3%, just over 3%.
And understanding that that percentage that you give would have been more than they would have done in 23, and now 3 more things.
Exactly. But that is what they're good at. And because they have the media outlets, they put out these distortions and they keep banging it. And our young people need to go back to the history books, read the history books, get information, accurate information, get data, proven data, and then form their opinion. They did it again with the National Social Council.
Yes, I thought you walked with the memorandum.
I mean, like, maybe it is the PPP way to just go into an Amerindian village and do what they choose to do. The APNU AFC government respect the Amerindian people enough to say, look, we're not just going to go into your village and take over and do our. You have a National Social Council. We're going to work through your elected leaders to provide assistance to decide how it is that together we're going to work on development. And so the first thing we did was to sign a memorandum of understanding, setting out how we're going to work together, how we're going to communicate. Appoint a person within the Ministry of Natural Resources who will be the point person for communication that will work with the National Social Council. They talk about us not giving the land for the National Social Council. But it was just not land. We rented a building for the National Social Council, furnished that building, provided supplies. There again, the PPP just, with their brand of truth version, totally distort things. And they're distorting this country, the reality of this country, they're distorting it. We discovered oil was discovered just as they were about to come out of government. The APNU AFC got into government. The industry average of moving from discovery to first oil is 9 years. 9 years. So you discover in 2015, on average, with the global industry, you start production some in 2024. Not this year, not last year, not until next year, the latter part of next year, that we would have been at first oil. Under the Ministry of Natural Resources and working with all the ministries within the government, I think about some 11 bits of legislation had to be passed to bring us to first oil. And that is in addition to all the other regulations and developing capacity and everything that had to be done in less than half the time of the global average.
We did it.
Now, can you imagine the global average being 9 years, and in less than that, Guyana is at the point of first oil? Can you imagine the amount of work that took? You were working at double the pace on everything in a country with almost zero capacity in 2050.
Yeah.
So it was double the pace. It was quick time. for 4 years to bring us to first oil.
Yeah.
Or they criticized the agreement. And I agree, it could have been a better agreement. But you know what I'm happy for? That in this parliament, in this assembly, during this week, we have heard them say it is Janet Jagan who signed that agreement.
Yes.
And I hope you guys can get that clip and
We will work on
let
it.
Diana see Janet Jagan signed the agreement. She signed the exploration agreement, and in that agreement was entrenched the framework for a production agreement. How much will the company get? How much will the country get? Under the auspices of the former Minister of Natural Resources, Raphael Trump. That initial agreement was upgraded. Few better terms were provided for the country. But you also have to understand that at the same time when we got into government, and we said we have this oil, and not only oil, but oil of such good quality, and we were going to push towards first oil. Remember what Venezuela did? They issued a decree that basically said what's happening offshore there is theirs.
Yep.
And so we had to move fast to first oil. We had to lock in Exxon, because if you remember the Anadarko incident, when Venezuela took that,
The CGX.
although not
CGX.
it was that drill ship, and they took it.
Oh, there's that. Yeah.
Yes, the Anadarko.
Yes.
Right? And then, of course, Suriname with CGX.
Yes.
And so we have had, as soon as we were on the cusp of our developing an oil industry, we've had bad experiences. So here was Exxon, this mega company out of the US saying, we have got commercial quantities. We could not take the chance and say, hey, let us look back at this agreement, let us look back at this production sharing, how it's going to work. We might be left with nothing by now, because it might have either been tied up in court, or Venezuela would have been free.
Because at the point to bear why it could have ended up in court is that Exxon
And we would not have had the money
have
to go to court.
Right, and they didn't have to, because they had an agreement.
Yeah.
But they took the step with us to say, okay, you're the new government. We will sit with you and renegotiate.
Yes, and we got
this
some
contract.
slightly better terms. And yes, we do believe that there is scope for even better terms.
Yeah.
For a new agreement, yes, it is time to sit down and look back at that. Fine. But at the time, take into consideration the circumstances. Now, all that money that we worked so hard to realize, double march into it, is now available for this country, not the government.
Yes.
And I think that's the mistake that the PPP is making. That it is their,
Their money coming out
It
of
is
their
not
pocket.
their money.
It's the people's
It is the
money.
people of Guyana money.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
carbon credits, it belongs to the people of Guyana.
Yeah. And we can continue
I
this
just-
conversation. Very good insight coming out from our end.
And we haven't got into the other stuff you talked about. I hope you stick
Some of the
around with us.
social programs
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
I put to them that
Yes.
are all frivolous.
Yeah, I still want us to continue the conversation, but I see here our
Mr.
MP is
Ferguson.
stepping on the podium there, and it's Ferguson.
Yes.
So we want to listen to her, and let's continue this conversation when she's wrapped up.
We would be glad to.
All right.
I am honored to join my colleagues on this side of the assembly to contribute to the 781.9 billion 2023 budget debate under the theme Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. Before I proceed further, Mrs. Speaker, kindly indulge me for a few seconds. I take pleasure in extending best and warmest wishes for 2023 to you, your family, and all members of Parliament and their loved ones. And also to commend my colleagues who came before me for a job well done. And I know those coming after me will continue the excellent presentation or performances. It is my desire, sir, to see behavioral change, a collective relationship between the opposition and government members of parliament this year. It is time, Honorable Priya Manikchan, we get it right. Let 2023 be the year of renewal and repositioning. Let us operate with maturity. Let us exude a high degree of professionalism and impartiality. We need to remind ourselves, Honorable Manikchan, that we were all elected by the electorate to address their issues and not to attempt to score cheap political party points. The struggle is real, Honorable Priya Manikchan, out there. And it is in this house that we, as responsible representatives, ought to find common ground for bettering the lives of our people and moving Guyana forward in accordance with our motto: one people, one nation, one destiny. This one Guyana first continues to divide our people and country. Let's stick with our national motto, which has been the focus of all political parties and our citizens since independence. Quoting from the first paragraph of the poet, or the poem Still I Rise, by the great civil rights activist and poet, the late Maya Angelou. And this is what she had to say, Maya Angelou, and this is what she had to say, Honorable Speaker. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt.
Minister, I've been stopping people using unparliamentary words, even in court. And you've actually used that word twice. I think farce was the first time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Bitter, twisted, beep, beep. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise, unquote. Well, today, I am here to participate in Budget 2023 after being away from this honorable house for 6 months due to the injustice meted out to myself and 7
Honorable member, you know, imputing the matter was taken to the privilege committee and a position was adopted and you have returned. I don't know about any injustice. What about the injustice you caused? The broken mace right before me. Look. You may continue now.
We are all here today. We are all here today. To God be the glory. Mr. Speaker, this 2023 budget is yet another for the enrichment of friends, families, and favorites aligned to the PPPC regime. It has absolutely nothing for the ordinary public servants, our teachers, low-income workers, and other vulnerable communities. This year, I am asking, whose lives did Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh have in mind to improve? Last year's budget was delusional and hopeless for the poor. It is crystal clear that only friends, family, and favorites benefited. These included huge contracts for friends, many of whom neither have the experience or expertise for huge. And Mr. Speaker, just last week, I had the opportunity of being under quarantine. I heard barbers, vendors from the market became overnight contractors and building roads and bridges. That is why we're having the substandard works before us. And those who benefited from undocumented cash grants and other handouts. These beneficiaries seem set to continue, Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh, on the path of building prosperities for tomorrow. In essence, Mr. Speaker, those whose lives improved last year will continue to benefit, to prosper tomorrow. That is the reality, Honorable. I was anticipating to see in Budget 2023 how this PPPC regime will address the 48% of our population already living in poverty, according to the World Bank report of Guyana, October 2022. Notably also is the information provided by the Food and Agriculture Report. And I guess my colleagues on the opposite side of this house, they would have dealt with that particular issue where it speaks to undernourished. Sir, this should be of concern to the regime, since from all indication, Guyana's population is catered for in the total population size. Yet the biggest budget to date from oil revenues made possible by the coalition government is not addressing the needs of the vulnerable communities. The 2023 budget is heavily focused on roads. Priya, it is focused on bridges. Priya, it is focused on other infrastructure, gas to shore project, the new Damara Harbor Bridge, construction of hotels. We just have one behind here, but lacks input for the human and social development needs of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether members from the government have read or taken note of the recent comments on this budget by right-thinking Guyanese. However, I would like to draw the honorable members' attention to G.H.K. Lals. And this is what he quoted Budget 2023. Budget 2023, a measly 1.7% for relief for struggling workers. And this was carried in Village Voice, January 17, 2023. Peeping Tom also added his voice. And this is what he said in his columns of January 18th and 19th. Budget 2023 was crafted in la land and an accountant's rather than an economist budget. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the GPSU in a headline report carried by Kaiser News, January 21st, 2023, Budget 2023 does not cater for the poor working class. And a letter to the editor, January 19, 2023, and this is what Mr. Norman Brown had to say. Budget 2023 is the heist of the country, unquote. The budget is true. Mr. Speaker, the budget is true PPP style, only focuses on macro and not micro. APNU was always a good life for all, which was achieved. The PPP is only about the private sector and the rich getting richer and the poor poorer. This was a text message sent to me after the reading of Budget 2023 from a very good friend of mine. And this is what another member had to say from civil society. Mr. Speaker, this too was shared with me. It's 62% growth, yet the tax threshold increase only gives Persons 0.5% increase in take-home of salary. Mr. Speaker, as I stated in a letter to the editor some time ago, Guyanese should no longer be taken for granted. People read widely and they internalize things, hence the interesting comments I just shared. Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh, in his introductory remarks, went down memory lane, peddling misinformation to cause aspersions on the PNC and coalition governments. He, however, failed to include the many atrocities and infractions committed on Guyanese by the PPPC between 2010 and 2014, which include the coveting of ancestral lands out at Spar Dam on the east coast of Demerara. The forensic report of October 20th, 2016 tells it all. A copy was laid in the National Assembly by yours truly during budget 2022. It also, if not all allottees paid below market value, extrajudicial killings, victimization, discrimination, flawed projects, and we've heard it throughout my colleagues' presentations. The Skeldon Sugar Factory expansion project, $220 million US. What an embarrassment. The Amila Hydroelectric project, $840 million US. Marriott Hotel, $58 million US. The one laptop per family program, $27 million US. The e-governance fiber optic cable, $32 million US. The specialty hospital, $18 million US. The ongoing travel CGIA expansion, $150 million US. I'm not forgetting, Mr. Speaker, the troubled Berbice Bridge, where $48 million US was injected. That engendered public criticism. He also, Mr. Speaker, failed to make mention of all the infractions committed by his regime since their illegal installation to office in 2020. No mention was made of the weaponizing of the courts, abusing of the Constitution, the famous revelations, Mr. Speaker, the famous revelations of Sue Gates and Jagdeo.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order in 416 in relation to imputing improper motive once again, and I can't have on the record that the honourable member has said that there's an illegal installation in office.
An illegal
installation in office. I cannot have that.
I didn't hear that, but I'll check the records.
I don't want to interrupt her. I understand she may be in a fragile state.
Honourable Minister, I'll check the record, and if it's so, I will make the proper decision. Honourable Member, you may continue, but again, that particular word may have slipped me, but we'll check in. Please
Thank you very
continue.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
When you leave out the words that are on parliamentary, you're going really, really good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And how his regime intends to address the inhumane treatment of our brothers and sisters who were dismissed from their public service jobs and replaced by friends and family of the PPP. Those who had their personal properties bulldozed and demolished in Cane View, Mocha, and removed from ancestral lands they were occupying over 30 years. Mr. Speaker, at paragraph 4.37 of the budget speech under the subhead, Sugar. There is a stated figure, and I quote, that over 7,000 sugar workers were severed. If one examines budget speeches of 2022 and 2021, we're getting varying figures. But Mr. Speaker, I want to set the record straight when it comes to the amount of persons who were severed from the sugar industry. Yesterday, my colleague asked or challenged the Honorable Speaker to produce to the National Assembly a list detailing the 7,000 workers that were severed. But Mr. Speaker, the Hansard of 2016, would say this, Mr. Speaker. Or for the records, may I remind and point the members on that side of the House to the official report of the 85th sitting of the National Assembly of Friday, 19th January 2018. And page 5 of that record reveals that the services of 4,763 sugar workers were severed. And I'm going to repeat, 4,763 sugar workers were severed from Gaisuku. The disaggregated figures are as follows, Mr. Speaker. 1,851 workers from Skeldon Sugar Estate, 1,181 workers from Rose Hall Sugar Estate, 1,480 workers from East Demerara Sugar Estate, and 251 sugar workers from the Wales Estate. Mr. Speaker, it will give us a total of 4,763 persons were severed from the sugar industry. The records are there. I'm going to lay it over. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I like many Guyanese, I'm disgusted at the repeated chorus of 200 new taxes imposed on Guyanese by the coalition. Being sung by the PPPC, after 8 years, Mr. Speaker, they are yet to make public the list detailing these so-called 200 taxes. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, Mr. Alistair Charney, during his contribution to budget on Tuesday stated, and I quote, increased taxes, VAT on hinterland fuel and travel, unquote. May I encourage the Honorable Member to verify facts and not to involve himself to be immersed in other people's work. However, to dispel the misinformation provided by the Honorable Member, allow me, Mr. Speaker, to provide the information. And it was carried in Guyana Chronicle, January 31st, 2017, and this is what the headline read. No VAT on air travel for hinterland residents. Government warns against price gouging. Mr. Speaker, I am going to lay it over so that it can be circulated to the honorable members. Also, Mr. Speaker, the evidence is there to substantiate that in 2018, the coalition government granted amnesty to delinquent taxpayers. Also, there was a reduction on the excise tax on importation of over land transportation, where hinterland regions, Mr. Speaker, benefited. And we can find this in budget speech of 2018, pages 78 through 79. The imposed 16% VAT, Honorable Manichan, by the PPPC in 2000 was amended to 14% by the coalition government. Public servants benefited from a 77% increase in less than 5 years. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the coalition without oil wealth did far more in less than 5 years compared to what my fellow colleagues on the opposite side did not do in 23 years pre-May 2015. Therefore, sir, the coalition government was prudent and better management or managers of our nation's resources. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to the housing and water sectors, a sector which affects every citizen in Guyana. It is up to remind ourselves that it is a constitutional right for affordable housing to be made available to our people. The provision of housing is pivotal to the achievement of larger development goals, such as economic development, social equity, and social cohesion. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, the robust implementation of an excellent strategic plan on housing and land use is critical to the alleviation of poverty and improving the quality life for our people. Since being installed into office in August 2020, the PPPC government has sought to give the impression that nothing was done in the housing sector between 2015 to July 2020. Sir, in 2017, an assessment was done to determine the state of the housing sector. The findings were quite disturbing, since the housing program implemented over the previous 2 decades focused primarily on divestment of land and development of the services and schemes. Despite the intended purpose of the CHPA, there was no robust strategy for the housing of low income and those at the lower end of the middle income earners bracket. Further, Mr. Speaker, what the honorable members who sit at the helm of this sector will not report to the nation is that the model used pre-May 2015 was unsustainable, thus causing approximately 28,000, which is equivalent to 45% of the 63,257 lots allocated to remain unoccupied. This, sir, was because of many factors such as affordability issues, lack of social facilities and services, inadequate and incomplete infrastructure, proximity to economic opportunities, and the challenges associated with households accessing finances to undertake their own home ownership. Mr. Speaker, members of the House should know that during the 2011-2015 period, because of the model I alluded to earlier, witnessed a far lower occupancy level of approximately 18.7%. Listen and learn, madam, listen and learn. While we constantly hear the drumming and the beating of 50,000 house lots by this PPPC regime and the billions invested thus far, we are yet to see and hear of a housing vision or a housing policy. Contrast this with the coalition government's approach to housing. We had a plan from 2017 to 2020 was to avail 10,000 housing units. We also charted a new policy direction for the housing sector, promised on the following: higher density schemes, Mr. Speaker, which speaks to the issue of construction of townhouses, apartments, etc. Right? Relocation and resettlement of persons who occupy unregulated lands. Consolidation of existing housing schemes, that is to ensure that infrastructure, the incomplete infrastructural works, Madam Rodriguez, that was left pre-May 2015, that is what we were going to do. Mr. Speaker, I know I'm getting them hot. I'm getting them hot when it comes to housing. Tickling them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, partnership with co-op societies. Mr. Speaker, you know, a picture tells 1,000 words. We're hearing about LBI. We distributed lands at LBI, but this is the state at LBI. A pasture at the moment. This is what ordinary people are going through. Lowlands, rather than taking the bulldozer and all the machines you all took into Caneville to bulldoze people, you should have taken those ferry machines to LBI and get the people lands ready. Mr. Speaker, look, the cows grazing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look, waste of taxpayers' money, all the pipelines, there's no infrastructure. You know, Mr. Speaker, I was the photographer on the ground. Look what is happening, all the pipelines, Mr. Speaker. I'm entering the area, Mr. Speaker. I noticed 6 piles of one of our posts, the Northern Lantern post, to implant for electricity, and up to now, you cannot, the people who got their titles and who got their allocation, they cannot access those lands. Mr. Speaker, you know what is happening? The monies close to 29 billion for 2022. You know where the monies are being spent? The monies are being spent on the Mandela to Eccles Road. Look what is happening there. Huge structures are going up. When you have the ordinary Guyanese, the ordinary public servants who cannot access their lands to start construction. Mr. Speaker, this is a bridge in the LBI area. This area is currently underwater. Mr. Speaker, another picture tells the story. Mr. Speaker, at number 75 Village, this is what is happening, Madam Susan Rodriguez. This is what is happening. And all we're hearing, well, I'm telling you, there's no work currently ongoing where these lands are constructed. This is what is happening, sir.
Honorable member, this is what is happening now. You'll need an extension.
Thank you. Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable member, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while I applaud the government for building a few houses in the Commons Lodge area, I did a site visit, Mr. Speaker, and this is what is currently existing in the Commons Lodge area. No contractors on site, Mr. Speaker, and this is what is happening. When our people are waiting for housing. Mr. Speaker, you know, they said we didn't do anything in the housing sector, but let me just run through quickly, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, they were able to inherit from us of 34.5 million US dollars. And this is to provide sustainable subsidies for core homes support and home improvement subsidy. We also had the IDB funded for the National Housing Strategy. That is to show that we were thinking, government that really want, have the ordinary people at our hearts. Mr. Speaker, we were able to, they're saying that we never develop housing schemes across this country. But Mr. Speaker, it would be unfair of me not to at least highlight the achievements of the coalition government. We were able to develop 22 new housing schemes, Madam Susan Rodriguez. We were able to expend close to 3 billion in installation of electrical installation. Mr. Speaker, we expended $2.7 billion to fix the substandard works at the 1,000 housing projects there in Perseverance. Mr. Speaker, we upgraded roads in CHPA schemes, regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. Mr. Speaker, I know the my time is running, but I know for a fact that we did a whole lot of work in the water sector, Mr. Speaker. We improved water quality and testing countrywide. GWI negotiated and executed a smart meter plan. We replaced over 100 manhole and 100 sewage chamber across the capital city of Georgetown, and the list goes on, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I now turn briefly my attention to the high cost of living. But Mr. Speaker, you know what? I was able to examine budget 2023, and in the budget, I cannot find any provisions for Silica City. But Guyanese are being romanced. Guyanese are being told about this new city, Silica City. Is this another Padovale tree? I'm just asking a question. Mr. Speaker, the high cost of living is killing our people. And I would want to say to the government, for the mortgage relief ceiling, I would like to recommend to this government. You love public servants so well. You speak so highly of them. Many of them, you said that 12,000 will now move from the threshold. So I'm saying to you, it is time the government find workable solutions to help our public servants access loans. If you got to call in the banks, work with them so that our people can have access. Someone who is earning at 81,000, a take home might be 20,000. That woman cannot go to the bank with 20,000 to access a $20 million loan. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC regime must act responsibly in the use of our financial and other resources for the benefit of all Guyana. The opposition has throughout this week made several brilliant recommendations, which the regime should consider and have included in the budget. Let's work together to make this $781.9 billion budget one that begins the positive transformation of the lives of all Guyanese. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, for the reasons advanced earlier, with a heart of compassion and love, I cannot give support to the budget in its current formation. Finally, sir, I leave Galatians 6:7 for us to meditate on. And this is what it says: do not be mocked. God is not mocked. For whoever, for whatever a man soweth, that will he also reap. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, what this scripture is saying to us: if you sow evil, you will reap evil. If you sow good, you will reap good. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May God continue to bless us, and may God continue to bless our dear land, Guyana.
Amen. Thank you, Honorable Member. And now, for the Honorable Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable Minister Colin Crowe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is an honor to stand in support of the national budget for the fourth time in less than 3 years. Budget 2023, presented by my colleague, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, provides this nation with a precise blueprint of the future that is to come under this PBPC government. It balances infrastructure development with modern systems for the delivery of social services that will significantly and positively impact the quality of life enjoyed by all citizens. But more importantly, though, it puts the needs of our citizens at the center of every project, of every social intervention, of every policy. It is truly a representation of the vision of this PBPC government for our beloved country. Mr. Speaker, if nothing else, the onset of the pandemic and the subsequent ramifications it visited to the world taught us that in a flash, everything can change. Though it took the folks across on that side of the aisle 5 grueling months to give up the power they were stealing from the people, many lives were... Honorable Minister, I don't think stealing is one of the words we permit. Though it took the folks across the aisle 5 grueling months to understand what democracy means and to not take away in front of the eyes of our citizens what belongs to them, and that is they expect nothing better than good governance and democracy. Many lives were lost, Mr. Speaker. Livelihoods were wiped out, but still we can boast of the gains that we have made as a government and as a people, despite the odds. Mr. Speaker, our achievements are worth repeating. Honorable Member, Ms. Ferguson. Put on the mic, please. Honorable Member. Good.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on standing order 41. 41-6, Mr. Speaker. And this is what it is saying: no member shall impute improper motive to any member of the National Assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member just made mention that many lives were lost, right? So, from my interpretation, Mr. Speaker, It sounds as though we on this side of the house were involved in the lives of persons as he claims. So perhaps he may need to clarify that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, we've seen many general statements being made. And in this particular instance, I can't rule in your favor. Continue, Honorable Minister, your time is not lost.
Our achievements are worth repeating, as in just under 3 years, through the vision of His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali and the incomparable strength in leadership of this PPPC government, we are charting the course of the fastest growing economy in the world. And unlike the opposition, who for 5 years wasted hundreds of opportunities to harness the power from the oil and gas sector to better position for our people to benefit every citizen, we have gone full steam ahead to craft, for example, a better local content policy, amended the Natural Resource Fund Act to make managing our oil wealth more efficient. We have successfully accessed carbon finance market, became the world's first jurisdiction scale country to be issued our carbon credits from our forests. We have awarded 14,000 scholarships to students of every race and region of Guyana. We have increased home ownership by 20,500. These achievements, Mr. Speaker, are only a few of the biggest gains we have made in under 3 years. Please sit, they're coming to you just now. On this note, I wish to congratulate the Honorable Vice President, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, for recognizing that all those years ago and championing the cause for payment for our forests. Today, we are reaping the benefits of his vision for the low carbon development strategy. Mr. Speaker, by 2025, Guyana will have a modern 4-lane bridge across the Demerara River, an onshore gas and natural gas plant, new, more developed road and water networks. Our skyline will be transformed with an influx of modern architecture, and the people of Guyana will benefit from better and more immediate access to social and health services. The manifesto promise of 50,000 house lots will be kept, and above all else, the people of our country will benefit from a more comfortable life. The point I wish to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, and to this Honorable House, is that we on this side of the House did not just win the 2020 election, but we are building, we are fortifying and consolidating the confidence that the electorate has placed in us, and the evidence of our competence to guide our nation is all around to see. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 budgetary allocations for the Ministry of Housing and Water builds on the gains that the ministry has made in 2020 and 2021. To this end, the ministry, we have allocated, as I just said, over 20,500 house lots. We have established over 50 new housing areas. We have upgraded and installed infrastructure in 43 existing housing areas. And so in reference to 22, a few minutes ago, Mr. Speaker, that's over 5 years duration, and I challenge that figure where I'm speaking here of under 2 years. We have built 827 low, moderate, high income houses, young professionals. A further 527 are in various stages of construction. The investment cost for these houses saw an injection of $7 billion. We have enacted the Condominium Act of 2022, which was assented to by His Excellency, and the regulations was gazetted, which now gives legal protection to the owners of the very duplexes that the previous member just spoke about. They are now able to come to the ministry and sign up for their title. The very duplexes that was just boasted about, none of those persons, none of the 80 beneficiaries could have signed for their title. Mr. Speaker, the Condominium Act, which received partial support from the opposition, will also see an opportunity for those persons to introduce more modern methods of housing. It is long overdue, and it has brought tremendous relief to the 40-odd owners, as I said. Mr. Speaker, we've also regularized many areas, and we've reduced squatter settlements from 19 to 13. We have processed over 4,265 certificate of titles and transports. We have injected over $50 billion into the Central Housing and Planning Authority. We have commissioned, and the reference was just made about a policy. We have commissioned and we've completed the study on the regularization for squatter settlements, and very shortly we will be bringing that report to the House. We have brought legislation to this House for the establishment of the single window system for development permits. Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation was highly anticipated, and it paves the way for a more cohesive, less bureaucratic, more
Welcome back to the Budget 2023 update, where we talk about what's happening in Parliament. I have with me our Chief Whip as we want to address a matter that has arisen and we've been dealing with for some time. I'll go straight to Chief Whip. Let's talk about it.
Okay. Right. So, in fact, you said matter, but there's actually several matters.
Yeah.
But essentially, this afternoon, we noticed it is now at its peak. You would recall in my budget presentation, I spoke about good governance and the lack thereof, and I spoke about what is happening in the Parliament of Guyana. In my presentation, I also mentioned that it is our opinion that the Speaker of the National Assembly is unfair in his rulings when it comes to matter brought to the House by the opposition. And we noticed that trend continues to happen throughout. Earlier today, when MP Sherrod Duncan was making his presentation, apart from several times being interrupted by the Speaker, the strangest thing happened. Now, I serve as a member of Parliament in the 10th Parliament, in which I'm aware that you can quote a source, whether it's newspaper or an individual. And if the Parliament is requesting you, you will have to lay that physical document over for them. Sherrod Duncan today was quoting the US President Barack Obama when he spoke, amongst other things, about corruption. The Speaker of the National Assembly stopped Sherrod Duncan, and he said in his opinion that it is an unparliamentary word. Now, when you look at the words that are there that are deemed unparliamentary, corrupt is one of them. But it doesn't apply, or it should not apply, or what was obtained in the past, it did not apply to when you are quoting. You are allowed to do that. Sherrod Duncan as well, in his presentation, made reference to the crime situation in Guyana, and he spoke about criminal elements. The Speaker of the National Assembly interrupted Mr. Duncan again and said that in his opinion, it is unparliamentary. Now, I've never heard that before, that you cannot refer to criminal elements in the society, because Sherrod Duncan was making reference to the crime situation in the country. Now, I want to take you back to what I mentioned earlier about Sherrod Duncan quoting the former US President Barack Obama in a line where he stated about corruption, and the Speaker stopped him. On Tuesday, Charles Ramson spoke, And in his opening remarks, Charles Ramson quoted an artist, of which he said, and I quote, "We are happy that they are fools, because once they're fools, you get an opportunity to see who's better." Charles Ramson was allowed to quote that artist in the House and made reference to and used the word "they are fools," which is an unparliamentary word. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Mansour Nadir, allowed Charles Ramson to make that reference because Charles Ramson was quoted. But today, when Sherrod Duncan is quoting former US President Barack Obama, and the word was used, corruption, the Speaker stopped him. The other issue we have is the unfair coverage by the National Communications Network, NCN. NCN is a state entity, and the expectation from them is that if you're covering the budget debates, that you cover all sides of the House. That is what should obtain. The National Communications Network, NCN, has more than 50 staff members currently at the Archichum Center. Those who are responsible to put the government's propaganda out, those who are responsible to put together memes, those who are responsible to cut and edit for the newscasts, those who will interview the ministers immediately after they come off, those who will do the sidebar speaking about the budget and whatnot. And there is absolutely no reference to or no visual of any opposition member who's speaking in the House. We brought to the clerk's attention last week before these debates commenced that in the leader of the opposition's office, there is a PR unit. And that PR unit covers New Nation and Nation Watch. And we have 3 persons who we are seeking authorization for them to cover the opposition members of Parliament. The clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Sherlock Isaac, indicated to me then that he was immediately going to speak to the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Mansour Nadir, and give me a feedback so that those 3 individuals could be accredited. To date, they have not been done. That has not been done. Our photographer was in the House to take photographs of our MP who's at the podium. This is no more than a 3-minute exercise in the dome. Today, our PR persons were told by the Parliament's PR person that they are being disallowed, and they will put an arrangement in place in which the Parliament will provide them with photographs. Now, if anyone here who's listening to this go to the Parliament's website and you try to find photograph of our MPs who spoke at the podium, you will not find any. If you go to the Department of Public Information, you will not find any. If you go to the National Communications Network, you will not find any. Now, the Parliament is telling us that we have to depend upon DPI and the National Communications Network, who throughout these debates have only been doing the People's Progressive Party civics propaganda. Now they're telling us that we have to get our photograph from them. We're putting this out there now because particularly what transpired today in the National Assembly, when both members Sherrod Duncan and Annette Ferguson was making their presentations, and the constant disruption by the Speaker of the National Assembly on matters that we've never heard of before. No person can relate that in a previous Parliament that the Speaker interrupt a member because they speak about the crime situation in the country and making reference to the criminal elements in the society. And as well as a former member of Parliament in the 10th Parliament, I have never been interrupted by a speaker for quoting from an individual or a newspaper, as how Sherrod Duncan was interrupted by the speaker for quoting former US President Barack Obama and using the word from his quote, corruption. And Charles Ramson on Tuesday in the Parliament was quoting an artist making reference to the fools, and that was allowed by the Speaker of the Assembly, Mansour Nadir. And that is the point that I've made in my budget presentation, because it was happening in the past, and it continues to happen in these debates, of which the Speaker of the National Assembly is very unfair in his rulings on matters or speaking by the members of the opposition.
I just want to say, what we are seeing, particularly as these budget debates started here, it's a more synchronized effort to, one, distract the citizens, because while they are not allowing us to do these things, they are then using the very media to publish lies, stories, all kind of propaganda. And because you're unable to, get those photos, be a part of what is happening there, you can have a camera in there.
Yeah.
You're, in some cases, you're not able to, you can only come out and say what is happening rather than show what is happening. And I think it is deliberate to the fact of the job that you MPs are doing in the House. They are being beaten at every point in these debates because they're not coming with anything. They're not explaining their portfolios. They're not telling the nation what they want to do. And what they're doing is strategically trying to distract the nation with a whole lot of propaganda while we are trying to discuss the budget. And, they're not sharing what is there. And I think it was important that we let the public know what is happening here as we sit.
No, I agree with you. So the point is, it's always been this way, that Minister Ashley Singh will put out his budget, but it is always a difficult task for the ministers of the PPP to defend what is there. Because there is no defense of a budget which is the largest ever, of $781.9 billion, of which only 1.7% is going to the average man out there. And no amount of propaganda can change the reality that when the ordinary Guyanese go to the marketplace, they don't have the sufficient monies to buy the basic food commodities. When the taxi drivers and the minibus drivers and so forth ply their trade, there is difficulty for them to get monies to buy the gas or the petrol that they need to do their, that is the reality. So no propaganda from the PPP, whether they use it the Department of Public Information, the National Communications Network, and the Guyana Chronicle, and the several other pro-PPP media outlets there, they can't distort or change the truth because the reality is on the ground. $781.9 billion means absolutely nothing to the average man if the value-added tax remains the same, starvation, wages, and salaries, 8% salary increase on the back of an inflation which renders that useless or unattractive. Today as well, we're speaking about the propaganda by them. Today in the House, the opposition walked out of the National Assembly when Minister of Local Government Nigel Darmalal stood up to make his presentation. And the reason we did that, and I want to remind your viewers, was because of what Nigel Darmalal, the sitting People's Progressive Party Civic local government minister, did last year while at the podium on his feet and said to an opposition female member of parliament on his feet live on national television while he was presented that she needed a dildo. Nigel Darmalal was neither suspended, was neither sanctioned, was allowed to sit in the National Assembly, was able to continue. But when the opposition members raised the concerns of the Guyanese people as it relates to the the NRF bill, 8 of the members were suspended for 6 and 8 months respectively without pay. But a sitting PPP minister can stand up in the National Assembly of Guyana whilst making a presentation and shout to a female opposition member of parliament that she needed a dildo.
As if it is a parliamentary word.
Exactly, and he's allowed to sit, not been suspended, not been sanctioned, and he's allowed to sit. That's why we walked out of the parliament today. Immediately, the Guyana Chronicle, which is another state entity being funded by the taxpayers of Guyana's money, took photographs inside of the parliament because they're allowed to do that, and they put out a narrative that the opposition walked out while the budget debate is continuing, without saying why the opposition members walked out. And that is what we're talking about. Because if our media people are allowed in the dome, which will give balance in terms of transparency and accountability, our media people will be able to show that after Nigel Darmalal was done and former Minister Annette Ferguson went to the podium, we went back in. So we walked out in protest for the vile, repugnant, and distasteful comment by a sitting PPP minister that a female opposition member wants a dildo, and he's allowed to speak in the parliament.
Correct.
So that is my statement for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I can see the comments. People are happy that they're being informed, and this is what we've been saying right through. There is no real aim or will by the PPP government to allow for any form of democracy, because it comes to everything that you said in your budget presentation. They have no clue what is good governance and what the word democracy truly means when you are at the National Assembly representing the people who placed you there. And these are the kind of matters we have to be talking about all the time. Thank you again, Chief Whip, for your contribution to the program. At this time, I would like to bring to our program none other than Miss Annette Ferguson, who would have just presented her budget debate speech after coming back to Parliament from her long suspension, as we just talked about. And, again, beating the government on the issues, and as well covering her sector, something we didn't see really from the minister responsible. Let's talk with Ms. Annette Ferguson. Welcome back to the National Assembly.
Thank you very much, Shanika, for having me here on your program, and to our wonderful viewers there across the social media spectrum. A pleasant afternoon to them too.
All right, thank you. So we're gonna get right on it. You had a lot to say. I mean, they try to work you up that, and again, these are things that people don't see, in the when they're listening to the speeches, all the things that are happening in the background. I think at one point you were getting a bit emotional. I figure it was what you were talking about, or maybe what was happening in the Parliament at the time. Let's talk about that to start with.
Well, Shanika, let me be honest with you. Housing is a major problem in Ghana. And I can tell you this, whenever it comes to housing, the People's Progressive Party Civic do not want you to speak about the housing sector. Because mind you, pre-May 2015, they had 23 years. And in that 23 years, I can tell you, it is under 63,000 house lots they would have allocated from 1992 to pre-May 2015. And I can tell you this, if anyone to visit those areas, the housing schemes created during their tenure, you will see the state of those housing schemes. Go to Perfect Harmony. The roads are in a deplorable state, and that is under the responsibility of Central Housing and Planning Authority. Go to Diamond. You still gotta be traversing through some huge craters. You understand me? You go to even Eccles. Look what is happening in Providence. Go across even Tushin. These are all housing schemes that were developed under the People's Progressive Party Civic. But rather than spending the money where it ought to go, they were spending the money elsewhere. And Shanika, what I discovered, look, as I said before, housing is a major, major problem to any government, because the Article 26 of our Constitution speaks to the right of housing accommodation for every citizen. But when Central Housing Planning Authority was created in 1948, there's an act, there's a housing act. I have also, I think, the CHNPA act, right? That CHNPA was actually created to ensure that housing is made available for the working class of people. Who are the working class? The rice farmers, the sugar workers, the public servants, the teachers, those self-employed, those are the working class people. But over the years, what was happening under the People's Progressive Party Civic pre-May 2015 is that they would have utilized the Central Housing Planning Authority for their own benefit for themselves and their friends. Because what if you're aligned to the People's Progressive Party Civic and you could get a plot of land or acres of land, let us say you can get an acre for 9,000, which might be on the market value, right? You can now use the acres to start constructing homes and selling it at exorbitant prices. So people who really need housing, you understand me, they will have to now end up buying these houses from you at exorbitant prices. This is, the whole housing sector is in a deplorable state. It's in a mess. And I want our listeners and viewers to understand. When we took office in May of 2015, there were over 50,000 applications, pending applications, Shanika. Dating back from 1992, I recall being at housing, though I spent a very short stint there. A pastor came to me and he said, man, Minister, come to see if you can assist me. And he was from across the West Bank. When that pastor presented his acknowledgement letter to me, 1997, the first question that jumped out from me, Pastor, where were you all this while? This is now 2019. Pastor said, Minister, the royal runaround you had to face, they never got house lots to give people. But when you go into schemes, you got Tom, who might be living somewhere else, was able to acquire a land or a house built by the government in one of the housing schemes. I'm saying this to say to you that I had the opportunity of visiting the Perseverance area where the PPP would have constructed, I think, they 1,000 homes between 2011 and 2014. And during my walkabout in the community there, a youngster came up to me with a child in his arm. He said, Minister, man, I really would like for you to assist me. I need a land to build my own home. So I said, where are you living? He said, man, I live in this house here. And the lot was provided to me. I said, so you're paying a rent? He said, yes. I asked, how much? He said, $50,000. So I said, wait, where is your landlord? The landlord living in Georgetown. So if the People's Progressive Party Civic pre-May 2015 really had housing at their heart, they would have ensured that every Guyanese, every working class Guyanese benefited from lands in this country.
Former minister, I you and I had conversations before about this particular sector. I have very strong views on residential home ownership in Guyana, and I believe that it is too expensive, and we as a country, especially now coming into Ireland, we have to do better by our citizens. I think land is too expensive. So we're not going to go there. But you mentioned something just now when you spoke about the roads in these communities, communities that are being developed, housing schemes or whatever. Now, I spoke with MP Patterson earlier, kind of trying to get an idea of which ministry is responsible in public infrastructure, the major roads, and he would have said just what you said, that housing is responsible for water, those kind of things, and ensuring that the infrastructure of those housing schemes are done. And so what is it that is stopping housing at this point in time? And I know you mentioned in your budget presentation, you showed some area that was supposedly developed. What is stopping them from going in and fixing these roads if that is their responsibility?
You know what is stopping them? Because they don't have a clear policy.
Okay.
There is no policy governing how the whole housing sector should be addressed. Now, let's say, for instance, any government, rather than opening up an area here for land, what you should be doing is concentrate. Put all your concentration in this area. So let's say, for instance, LBI, because that's the photo I just displayed in the dome there,
Yes.
right? LBI is a new housing area developed, which was established under the coalition government. They're claiming ownership. Prior to us leaving government, we issued house lots to persons in those areas. I get calls, people send me thank you messages, you know. So what's supposed to be happening? We go to LBI, we intend to establish, let us say, 500 lots. Let me ensure the basic amenities are in place. One, road. Second one, light. Other one, water. Now tell me, if these things are in place, you will have persons moving out to the land and start constructing. So if there's no road, if there's no electricity, if there's no water, and I was given an allocation, by right. I can't get my allocation today, and I move on to the land tomorrow.
Even when you're ready, the trucks can't go in because it's not road.
And the other thing about the government, the next thing that really, really went for me for my presentation is that other than roads, water, electricity, the government got to find ways and means of engaging the telecommunication organizations. Good, you got GT&T, you got Digicel. You know, in in Trinidad and Tobago, and also Barbados, when the government create housing scheme, they ensure that the basic things are there, not just road, light, and water.
And internet is not a luxury anymore.
Exactly.
It's not a luxury.
It's a necessity.
Yes.
You know, this brings out a point, and I think you mentioned some of it in your debate presentation. They talk constantly about the coalition not doing anything, and particularly as well in the housing sector. You mentioned perseverance. That area, I remember a long time ago when I was much younger, we visited somebody that was living in that area. And at that time that area was around probably 10 years. And you hardly had anything. You didn't have any roads. People didn't have phones. They didn't have anything in there. And it was under the coalition government, and I'm talking about perseverance on the East Bank behind Providence. It was under the coalition government that area was developed. You had one stretch of houses prior to. The development came when the coalition government started building homes that were way better than what was already created in those areas. And that is when infrastructure was put in place in that area.
Yeah.
And it was until that period that people started building in the area, because people were not going in, because just what you said, there was no infrastructure, no roads, no water, no light. Everything was difficult. And you find that the PPP love to talk in some sense about housing. They tell you, I give out 10,000 here, or 1,000 or 2,000 here. But every time you visit those areas, there's no infrastructure in place. So hence people cannot move. They could have been paying a mortgage instead of paying rent.
Exactly.
And that is one of the things that the coalition focused in on in their term.
I heard, I think it might have been Tuesday or Monday, the Honorable Member, Miss Walton, saying that the coalition, there wasn't a Ministry of Housing under the coalition. The difference, she might be right, the department was there, but not a ministry. So the difference between us and them is that they issue out bush lots. I'm calling it bush lots. When our focus was more on community building, having cohesive communities, right? People living in an undignified way, right? So that is why you had the perseverance that was developed under us as the model for any other housing scheme to come thereafter. But is the PPP we dealing with? I know time is on us. Is the PPP we dealing with? And they're back to their old ways. No, we call it no policy and
no plan.
And no plan. And I can tell you, the poor class of people, the low income earners, will continue to face the brunt of it all, because it's all about grabbing lands for friends, families, and favorites. And you know, Randy, before we take our leave, you made mention about the exorbitant prices for houses.
Yes.
I agree with you. The time is now
For us to help our people. Yeah.
for the government. You have more monies available. You understand me? So why not probably at low income earner, you can consider probably having that person pay like $100,000.
Yeah, the government could back that loan.
You understand? Yes, or start building more houses.
A point to make on that, and I mean our MPs on the floor, so we want to get to him, is that while the coalition was in government without oil money, they gave out lands at 50%.
Yes.
And these things, and that is what helped to bring in, because you talked about the backlog. We recall that. And a lot of that backlog was pulled in under the coalition, and we didn't have 23 years to do it.
No.
We can continue this conversation. Housing is very, very interesting.
Yes.
But folks, let's go. We're gonna thank the MP for coming and sharing, and welcome back. I know that the speaker still is carrying a chip on his shoulder. You know, I heard that we was dealing with you.
Mention the whole thing.
But we're gonna head to the floor as our MP is there. We'll be back with you after that.
Oh Lord.
Be specific, East Berbice Quarantine Region number 6. There are many services agencies that are not providing services up to standard, and we were hoping that Budget 2023 will bring more to the people of this region. Mr. Speaker, the people of Berbice Quarantine deserve more. Ministers and MPs from the government side have been repeating the 7,000, the 7,000, the 7,000. But I want to recall, and I want to set for the records that we must not be biased in our deliberation, and we must acknowledge the fact that 2015 to 2020, indeed, we had a lot of growth and development. It seems as if though the 7,000 sugar worker is the only story that came speaker after speaker from members of the opposite side. I wish to recall, Mr. Speaker, that as a child growing up in East Quarantine, Berbice, I went to New Amsterdam passport office as a child and got my first passport here. And then when the government changed in 1992, Mr. Speaker, that office was closed. For 23 years, the people had to travel to Georgetown to get a passport. And these are the facts that the PPP must bring out as well. They were in government, and they closed the passport office in New Amsterdam. 2015 came APNU, AFC to the government, and a passport office was built for the people of Berbice. We are hoping that in 2023 budget, a passport office will be built for Region 5 and all the other regions of this country, and not centralize it so that people do not centralize it so that the people will have to travel to Georgetown. Mr. Speaker, all Berbicians require the services. And we must not come to this honorable house and say 2020 to 2023, PPP doing this and PPP doing that and PPP doing that. We need to get the facts right, Mr. Speaker.
And Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that a team of ministers, MPs, and parliamentary staff went to visit some health facilities in Region 6. And to begin with, the model health center for this country comes from Port Brant. It is not a government alone initiative, it's the people as well as the government that established this health center that is second to none in Guyana. And we were very much pleased with what was happening there. Then we went to the Fort Kanji psychiatric hospital, Mr. Speaker. And it was brought to the attention of the team that the sewage system there is overflowing. Mr. Speaker, it was brought to the attention of the Honorable Dr. Mahadev and Dr. Vindi. And Mr. Speaker, to date, more than 6 months, that was not fixed. So when we come here and we try to paint a different coat to what really is happening, we need to get the facts right. Mr. Speaker, for health in the region, the people of East Bank, Berbice, were suffering for 23 years without health facilities. Dr. Mahadev, the honorable member, would know that once a week, a team would go down to East Bank. But Mr. Speaker, coming of the APNU AFC to government 2015 to 2020, a new health facility, health center, was commissioned in East Bank, Berbice. Mr. Speaker, the dilapidated building of Central Police Station, Albion Police Station, Wim Police Station, all these buildings were in a very, very bad shape. 23 years, Mr. Speaker, no work was done. Thanks to the leadership of the APNU AFC, Central Police Station was constructed. A new police station in Amsterdam. Mr. Speaker, Albion Police Station, brand new, or new brand, whichever you want to say. Mr. Speaker, Springlands, 51, Flatbush, and we come here to say nothing was done under APNU AFC. Mr. Speaker, we know that it is not in the PPP manifesto to provide free transportation for our children. And 23 years, our school children have to pay public transportation. Parents have to bear the cost. APNU AFC came on board in 2015 and started to provide free transportation for region number 6. There's a lot of comments, Mr. Speaker, about the quality of the bus and the made of the bus and the age of the bus. But these are free buses. We did not put our hands in our pocket and buy it, Mr. Speaker. These are donations that are coming to the people. And it was providing a huge service to the poor people of region number 6. Yes, we agree. It had mechanical issues and maintenance costs. Who's there? Always work hard. I'm in region 6. You're not living there in region 6. I know. Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, government, APNU, the PPP came into office. And because the bus at the top marked AVG, that was removed. We don't have a problem with that. We don't have a problem if you want to change the color as well. But what we want is that you increase and expand that service. Because of the pressure of the people of East Berbice quarantine, we see now that the PVP is falling to it and they are expanding that service. Mr. Speaker, it is a good cause. And I will commend the PVP for purchasing new buses with the IL money. I will want to commend the PVP for purchasing new buses with the taxpayer money. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is a service for the people. Mr. Speaker, services to the people of Oriala, Baracara, land and registry building environments, GCOM office at WIM, GRA building in Amsterdam. A lot from Bloomfield, let's catch a bus though. A lot from Bloomfield, let's catch a bus. Where Mr. Honorable Minister is from. Mr. Speaker, when we come here and talk about the AP and UAFC did not do anything for 2015 to 2020, we must remind ourselves about the piracy situation that we had in the quarantine. Who worked and reduced that? AP and UAFC. Thanks to the Honorable former Minister Ramjatan. Mr. Speaker, that was just to name a few, basically to highlight the records that indeed AP and UAFC deliver service to the people, and if given the opportunity, would have expanded on same.
I'll give you the opportunity to get 5 minutes, Honorable Member, with an extension.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Speaker. I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Member, you may continue in 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As it relates to education, Mr. Speaker, we know that the services of the buses are very much important. The regional administration redrawing 60-seater and replacing them with 30-seater. We know that the mathematics is a bit difficult, but we want to say to the Honorable House, if you are pulling out a 60-seater, then you must replace it with 2 30-seater or a 60-seater, so that we will be able to ensure that the children get to go to school. The 30 children that are being discriminated against now, Mr. Speaker, when we come here and say that we are giving 35 plus 5, 40,000 to them, let us do the maths. A child traveling from Skellen to New Amsterdam pays about $2,000 a day. That's $10,000 a week. That's $390,000 per academic year. And you are giving them 40,000 to say, hey, take that. You know? Mr. Speaker, I am asking here as a representative of these the bus traveling and transporting our children from Skellen to New Amsterdam. And then we will support the budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have introduced nursery education since the 1970s. Yes, we, the PNC, not you. We have introduced nursery education since the 1970s. And to date, Mr. Speaker, we have not put effort to make it compulsory. I am asking the Honorable House members from both sides to ensure that we put systems in place so that nursery education becomes compulsory. That is one. And number two, we are still operating with the ancient law as it relates to the Education Act. I am proposing, Mr. Speaker, that the Education Act currently, the current Education Act holds it at 14 years, 9 months, which ends compulsory education. From that time, Mr. Speaker, 14 years, 9 months, cause our children to drop out of school. I am pleading with the Honorable Minister and members of this Congress that we need to dialogue so that we can be in it. The 3901 to cause our children to be in school until the age of 16 so that they can have a proper secondary education. There is a gap between grade 6 results, achievement, and grade 11, which is CXC. The amount of children that are graduating from nurseries, from primary school, are not matching up to the numbers graduating from secondary school. So we are seeing there, Honorable Speaker, that there is a gap. Our children are falling through the crack. That is why we need to ensure that proper policies are put in place so that we can be able to ensure that our children have the proper education. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to bring a very sensitive issue to the House. A child in Blackbush Polar born handicapped. He's on the public assistance list. But when the 100,000 was given, a child didn't receive it. I made representation to the relevant authorities, and up to today, right? I am saying, honorable members of this House, we need to ensure that the services of the people are given to them. I tried to raise it. I raised it with the honorable minister, supplied pictures and all the information. But it is, I'm saying to all of us, let us ensure that we good. Mr. Speaker, finally, there is a lot of talks about the Guyana Technical Training College at Port Morant that is to be built for hospitality training and all training for the Cooperative Republic. And I want to say for the records, it is proven that works are being done on this spot, which is an old cemetery, and our slave and indentured servants are buried here. We are appealing to the relevant authority to ensure that this cease immediately, because we cannot permit the PPP or any administration to dig up a cemetery and say that is development work. These are the ancestors from the community. The first set of people who went there at Bongyard were buried there, and it is indicating to us that proper assessment was not done by the government to ensure that a proper piece of land is being done. Mr. Speaker, as it stands, if the budget remains as it is, then I am having difficulty supporting same. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable member. And now for the honorable minister within the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, the honorable member, Minister Anand Prasad.
Mr. Speaker, pleasant good afternoon to you and the honorable members of this House. Mr. Speaker, if that is the level of representation from Mr. Jai Prashad, the honorable member in Region 6, up to AFC, you're in serious problems. Serious problems. And I don't mean to really hit you hard this afternoon, but just to let you know that you will see a slew of developmental works that will transform Region 6 this year, 2023, from this year, 2023 budget. Sometimes we must be truthful. Sometimes we must be truthful to ourselves and do not bring to this honorable House untruths. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to make my presentation to the debate on this year's budget, which was presented in this National Assembly by my colleague, the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. From the outset, let me thank the Honorable Minister and his competent staff at the Ministry of Finance for their hard work and dedication towards ensuring that the process and delivery of the budget was smooth and successful. Budget 2023 comes at a time when Guyana is finally standing strong and firm on its 2 feet as a truly democratic and law-abiding nation after years of hardships and political unrest brought on by the APNU AFC administration. Of course, endured by the ordinary folk as a result of the policies, plans, greed, violence, and political pettiness of the APNU AFC in this house and outside. Budget 2023 also comes to this August house when Guyana is still reeling from the consequences of the 2020 elections, which was almost snatched by members of that side of the house from the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, we have a presidential commission of inquiry going on at this time into the conduct of those elections. We will have the truth, and justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done in the courts too, where there are a barrage of charges facing members of this honorable house from the APNU AFC side. Guyanese and the world
viewers. So we're here again. I mean, we're very sorry that you had to endure some.
A couple minutes, Anand Prasad.
Yes.
We apologize.
We apologize. We are here with our MP who just came off the floor, none other than our Region 6 MP, Mr. Dineshwar Jai Prashad.
Right.
Welcome to the program.
Yes. Here we give you an opportunity to unpack, you had a little time on the floor, and we want to give you an opportunity to kind of unpack and go into detail some of the issues that you would have brought to the fore.
Thank you very much. Pleasant good afternoon, viewers. I am happy to represent the APNU AFC. I'm coming from East Burbage Quarantine. It's a privilege to bring the bittersweet of what is happening in East Burbage Quarantine.
Yes.
I say that with no apologies, because every day we are being observing that the amount of work being done in Region 6 are not being divided in an equitable manner.
Yeah.
There are still villages operating better than some, and infrastructure work being done more than the villages that are favored by the administration. I want to say that villages like Angais Avenue in Amsterdam, Manchester, Lancaster, Liverpool, Alness, Kildonan, Nurney, these villages that are predominantly the supporter base of APNU AFC are not getting the amount of infrastructural work. We still have in these communities mud dam or sand dam, as we will see. Whereas if you take a village like Hampshire, Belvedere, Albion, these villages are having so many roads and other infrastructural work that is glaring to the eye that things are not. Some people are privileged and some are more. That is what is happening. So what I want to say directly is that we have been hearing the ministers and the MPs on the opposite sides bashing all day, every day, about nothing was done by the APNU AFC. So for my introductory comments there, I had to highlight some of the things that was done. And this is to say to the people of Region 6 that do not fall for the fluff that the PPP is propelling.
Yeah.
And indeed, some infrastructural work was done. The work with the police stations, rehabilitation, health centers, GRV building, the lands and survey building, the GCOM building in Region 6, passport office, all these things that, that were centralized in Georgetown are coming to the East Berbice quarantine region.
And in turn, saving those residents lots of money, because we used to see a lot of persons having to travel up, then you have to wait the long lines and all these things, and this was a part of the the proper planning a government should do. You saw the decentralization of a lot of things happening in Region 6, Region 10, Region 9, and all of these places.
Correct. I want to say that as a child growing up, I went to New Amsterdam for my passport. That was under the PNC time.
Yeah.
And after government changed in 1992, that ceased to exist. For 23 years, we had to travel to Georgetown, centralized. The cost of the passport, the cost of the transportation were 5 times more than that of the cost of the passport.
You have to go multiple times.
Right? So you have to go one day and do the form and do the necessary, then come back. So it was an economic burden on the people from Berbice. APNU came onto being and show the country that decentralization and evolution of power is what is needed. And that was done to ensure that the people save more in their pockets. Right? But we see that the cost of living, the way people live, that doesn't matter for the PPP. What matters for them is how much big project can be done so that money can be spent in other ways. Many of these things happening in terms of what they call the duplex and the hotels and the stadiums will not benefit the common man. The man who lives day to day, a laborer, a farmer, a fisherman. No. We are saying that if we follow Professor Clive Thomas' suggestion and say, let us try to give subsidies and some money to the people, that will lift their standard of living. But we know that the PPP is bent on part-time job. We can operate in that system for too long.
Or problems are not temporary.
Take for instance, Port Brown Hospital have 90 plus part-time workers. What are they doing? One hospital. What are they doing? Or you have 10 for cleaning, 10 for this, 10 for that. But you have 90 plus of them. I'm saying it is just siphoning away the treasury, sharing out the money. Monitoring of this is another story. I do not have anyone getting a little money from the government because it is our money coming to us. It's not nobody pocket money coming to us, basically. So, but wasting or not accounting for taxpayers' money is another story. I am saying these individuals can be put into proper use, whatever is in need in construction or block baking or dressmaking or all these systems can be put in place that, okay, you take 100 of them and put them there and we produce concrete blocks for the entire country.
Permanent jobs.
Permanent jobs. You put 100 here and we stitch uniform for the entire country. So that systems can be put in place. But what we see happening now is that they're just cheering up. Also, I want to bring to the attention of the Guyanese public as well as the viewers in the diaspora and overseas. It is not happening in all the regions.
That's interesting.
It is not happening in all the regions. I can say Region 6 has the most. Is it being done to reaffirm voters that we are doing this?
This is your geopolitical base.
That's it. So I'm saying, why is it not so extended into region number 4?
Region number 10.
Region number 10. The population-wise of region number 4. If region 6 we have 4,000, then we are supposed to have 40,000 region number 4.
Because it's a bigger
population. So it is saying a lot to us, right?
We should be seeing 500 part-time workers at Georgetown Hospital.
Exactly.
It's like 90 over there.
I want to bring a very touching situation. From the budget presentation, the Honorable Minister made mention about building a Guyana Technical Training Operant, hospitality college training for this will be built on the cemetery.
Wow.
This will be built on the cemetery. And I was reliably informed that relatives of Dr. Jagan were buried there. This was an old cemetery for slave and indentured laborers. When they came to Port Morant, Bongyard was the place that you had to be. That was the first landing place, Bongyard. From Bongyard, you moved to other areas in Port Morant. So basically, when the people died who did not get cremated or buried here, we have some pictures as well, and people are coming to say to us that they went around and asked some questions. Majority of the people here are young people, not aware of the full facts and history relating to the area. So I'm saying that the government needs to go there, civic-minded citizens need to go there and bring it out so that that project can be halted and a new venue can be placed.
So before they identified this spot, there wasn't any sort of investigation of, you know, the plot of land that would be used, anything of that nature? No
I can't really say. I doubt it. Because
having their track record.
To build something like that, there is no need for you to go in that immediate community. You need to go to the wider community to get the older folks to give you information so that your decisions will be best.
Guided.
We don't want history to repeat itself. There is a situation somewhere in East Coast, George, leading up to Georgetown. A businessman,
Paranam area.
I would suggest that area. A businessman was given a piece of land
and they
part of a cemetery, bulldozed the tombs, and the business closed down. Because it was not an ideal spot. These people are resting there, whatever may be. Let them rest.
You don't have to believe, but these things happen. And what you're talking about, I can attest to. That's an area I'm from. And the residents at the time of that project being brought up and them giving it out, they raised the concerns. And, you know, these people, they didn't, even the environmental officer raised the concern, and they decided that they will disregard what the environmental officer at that time said and go ahead and do it. And now it is there. Nothing is happening there because nobody wants to work there.
So, that's it. Another thing I want to touch on, if
you can go ahead,
is the transportation issue in region number 6.
Yes. Talked about the buses.
The buses. So basically, the PPP is under pressure in region number 6 because APNU AFC started free transportation for the children. Not all the children, but they started the initiative. And because we apply basically pressure on the system to say, here what happened, it has been providing a lot of services for the people. Attendance is up, and once attendance is up, we will have more children completing primary and secondary schools. So what we are asking is that we have oil money now. All these that were done before was without oil money, oil revenue. Why can't we provide free transportation for the entire country? I am asking for region number 6. We have some children traveling from Skellen to Borisai, Skellen to Amsterdam multilateral. These are our 2 regional schools. And because of the gas price and all these things, they have to pay at least $1,000. You know, right? It's 60 mile plus. So they have to pay 1,000 go and 1,000 come. There are some vehicles who will charge 900, some will charge 1,100 based on, you know. So we are suggesting that the 40,000 is a good initiative. But that is just 1 month for that child traveling from Skellen to New Amsterdam.
And it's a one-off.
It's a one-off. So if you put 2 60-seater buses that will transport children from Skellen to New Amsterdam back and forth, we are saving poor people 40,000 a month. Not 40,000 one-off, you know, 40,000 a month. And this is what we're talking about, putting money into the poor people pocket. We are hoping that the initiative will caught the ears of the ministers in the region, and they will buy into that.
Go ahead. No, I was saying, as we just mentioned, there are lots of oil money coming in. Outside of those things you mentioned, development in the region, whether it be agriculture or otherwise, what would you like to see the government put money to?
Well, a lot of talk is being as it relates to Gaisuku. And we know that Gaisuku is a milking ground for the PPP.
Yes.
There is no apologies. APNUAFC placed 36 billion into Gaisuku, knowing that the EU recommended that Gaisuku going down. But still, because of the
social side of it,
they had to.
Stagger.
Right sizing of Gaisuku was the thing that was appropriate. The APN, the PPP government now is putting back money into Gaisuku. If you are claiming that we sent home 7,000 workers and they so love the industry and they so love the PPP, why are you struggling after 2.5 years to have 2,000, 3,000 workers back in at the estate? It has been 2.5 years and Rosal Estate is less than 1,500. Skeleton Estate worse off. So if the people so love Gaisuku, so love sugar, so love the PPP, why you have to put ad in the newspaper and the TV running continuously calling for people? We are saying to them that you have created an avenue that people will not want to work there. They go now and hook onto the part-time job that they work at about $4,000 per day, and you are paying them 2,000 and 2,300 and 1,700 and 2,500 at the Gaisuku. Who will go? So we are saying that they will continue to pump money into Gaisuku at the expense of the Guyanese population to show that yes, we love. And we know, the Honorable Minister said that by second crop of 2023, that will be an impossible task. This will run until 2025 because they do not have the capacity to get back that on its feet. We are saying diversification. Diversification. Take this now, make it into something that can produce other things. You got crops that can go. You claim 7,000 sugar workers were sent home. Take the 7,000 sugar workers and give each one of them 1 acre land. 7,000 acre.
Yeah, and support the farming industry.
Create a multi-purpose road, all-weather road. Send them down into the farm. Provide duty-free access to them. And we produce our vegetables, grains, fruits to feed ourselves in the Caribbean.
Definitely.
Diversification. Take so much acres and we do aqua farm. All species of fishes. We do it there. And we will employ people. So when we hear about offshore cage fishing and all these things that will take money, we have the land here. Why can't we set it up and do inland fishing that we will employ more people? Cage fishing is for rich people. Poor man will not go out there.
Correct, is right.
So we depend on, my take is, a rich man goes to the supermarket and full the car trunk. Poor man goes to the little shop in the street corner or the market, day in, day out, to buy and live for the day. That is the disparity in this country. Who have affluent, they're good, they decide everything, but who are without, struggling. But we know that this will not be forever. After 23 years, we have to change, and we know sooner rather than later, the people getting smarter and smarter every day, and they will do what is necessary.
All right. We have a few minutes more, and I just want to ask you, what would be your sum up statement
of this
budget, 2023 budget?
It is basically making the rich richer at the expense of the poor. How many of our poor people will have scholarship to the University of Guyana? I'm not talking about gold. Gold came now. UG was established for Guyanese. Bringing gold now is another story.
Yeah.
Right? Good. When we make all our children accessible to free education from nursery to university, that is the first step in working to reduce poverty. There are many countries that operate in a system whereby as you qualify yourself, you move out from where you are. But in Guyana, we tend to stay and work and live among our brothers and sisters in the community living basically. A lot of people gravitate to Georgetown because of more opportunities. But we are from the country. So we stay there and we work and eat and live. And basically, I'm saying, you have in the same community a man with a master's degree, you have a doctor, you have a lawyer in that community, and then you have 20 who just drop out. I am saying, if we offer free education at all levels, and the pay that comes with it as well.
Yes.
Because this is another thing.
And the job
that we need to look at. Once people are qualified, they will get jobs. Jobs must be created. We are operating on an old public service rule that is way back. We have gone beyond that. You cannot say, okay, the rule was you must have 2 of this officer in this department 40 years ago. And are we still working with that? We are supposed to have more. So we need to look at the whole policy system of the country and say that there are so many areas that we need to implement, update, and change so that we can be able to foster job opportunities. Take, for instance, I am working in education. We want result. And you continue to have, at the secondary school, 35 children to a teacher.
Yes.
Put that to 20. Put that to 15, so the teacher will have one-on-one to interact. Have teacher aid, people who help out to do other things in the school. So the teacher job is directly to teach, curriculum delivery. And we will have more of but I'm saying that sometimes it feels as if when a person holding office wake up in the morning and they have a dream, they had a dream last night and they wake up this morning and they say, okay, we want to implement this or implement that. That is what is happening as it relates to the state we are in right now. I want to say to the supporters of AP and UAFC that wherever you are, do not lose hope.
Correct.
Do not lose hope. We have suffered in the past and we did not give up. I'm appealing to you, hold the fort. Try as much as you can to cut costs and save a little here and there. Go back to Mother Earth. Plant the soil, plant the land, plant the yard, plant the farm, so that you can generate and supplement yourself and family. When we do that, then we can be able to fight this pandemic of the PPP.
I like that.
Beautifully said. I like that.
We have the time. Hold the fort.
Because we're coming back very shortly.
Right. Thank you very much, MB, for coming and sharing your thoughts and giving us an idea of what's happening in region number 6.
Thank you.
For those persons who are joining us, we're still bringing you a live coverage of what is happening at Budget 2023 debates. If we take a live look at what is happening on the floor right now, I believe Mr. Saad is still
on the floor.
He has a few minutes, probably like 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up. Let's get a look at who is our final MP for the day.
Yes. I think we have Mr. Richard Sinclair.
Who is representing region number 8.
Yes, who will be our last speaker for today. He should be coming directly after Mr. Prasad. All right, so stay tuned and we'll keep you updated as we continue our conversation with our MPs and the general discussion in terms of what is happening in the parliament.
Before we go back to the floor, Shanika, I wanted to point out something that we've been saying for the last 2 days, that this idea of lack of planning, ad hoc nature of this administration, I guess this lends itself it lends itself to corruption, because if there is no policy guideline there, if there's no plan, if there's no structure, then we can do this here and do this here. Interestingly, Mr. Patterson mentioned it. Is that 2022 budget, we didn't see this road in it. We didn't see that road. We didn't propose these things in the year before, but you're seeing them. Somebody got them to say, we could do this road. And so there's this lack of accountability. And so if there's no accountability, no transparency, we can siphon off money easily because we didn't plan for it. And so you saw the end of this year, so many ministries hurrying.
End of last year.
sorry, end of last year, still thinking in 2022, hurrying to spend out the money, billions of dollars in contracts being handed out at the end, in the last 2 weeks of the year, because there is no plan, there is no policy in place, a guide how we are going to go about spending these money, and you're not hearing it this year.
Yeah, and you know, the other part of that is that they, at coming down to the end of the year, there was this hurry to hand out contracts, etc. But the program that you quote unquote set for the year, the roads and the projects that were, you know, set out for the year weren't even complete. And you were saying and seeing that the money for these very roads were just, you know, the percentage is going up in terms of use of money. But when you go to the actual roads, you don't see it. I mean, we had a typical example, and I was supposed to show it about a day or so ago, where the minister was in the house, Minister Edgel, and he talked about the Pleasance Road that was being done as we speak, and he was so, you know, going on about it. And we have the pictures. These roads have not had any work done in it since last November.
Yeah.
The work stopped and there was no continuation, but the minister stood in the house during supplementary budget saying and lying to the Guyanese population that these roads were completed or are being done and in the process of being done. And he went so far to say that the street that the leader of the opposition lived in was being done. And the truth is, nothing is being done on that half of the road. It is the half over the line, which would be to the southern end of Prince William Street, that was being done. And all the residents saw during that period is the road being dug up in different sections, inconvenience. They flat it out back, and the roads are worse than it was before they came. And nothing is being done. And those works would have stopped probably about 4 to 5 months now. In fact, I think those roads stopped since October, September period. You know, it hasn't been completed.
And it must be a concerning thing for Guyanese. It must be a concerning thing that, okay, you hear about these monies, 780, how much point? Well, of $1 billion. This is not chicken feed. This is billions of dollars. These are billions of dollars coming from the government coffers, and it is supposed to be used for the development of the country. What is the plan? The lack of a plan is concerning. I'm sure that our viewers will share the same sentiment.
I mean, our viewers are living in Guyana, a lot of them. So they are experiencing the things that the government side is talking about and saying it's not happening. Maybe it's not happening to them because they clearly live on a different level. On the floor, I see our MP. I think he's beginning to
Richard
speak.
Sinclair.
It's the Richard Sinclair. Let's take a look.
The midpoint of the PPC's current term in office, it is therefore it therefore presents a timely opportunity both to look back at the first, I'm doing like my previous speaker now, at the first half of this term, and even more importantly, to look ahead at which is yet to come. We have seen the PPP enchanted by the promise of all revenues spent wisely with scant regard for whether that spending has actually resulted in progress. End of quote from the group of the persons from the Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh's presentation, and I tried to emulate the speaker before me. But Mr. Speaker, they built road at frantic pace, but almost the moment the roads are laid down, they begin to crack and crumble. They throw billions of dollars at education, but achieve lower pass rates in CSEC mathematics, of course, than what the coalition did with far less money. Huge sums are allocated for healthcare each year, but as Guyana's life expectancy improves substantially, no, the answer is no. The PPP believes in output, in spending, but has little interest in outcomes. Mr. Speaker, these concerns merely scratch the surface, but I turn my attention now to the major issues of the day. That is cost of living. That is cost of living. The worst we have seen in 40 years. Mr. Speaker, Guyana's interland regions still suffer the most when prices soar, because bringing goods into the region, the transportation cost rose by 20%. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine that a 12-ounce bottle of water on the coast which costs $100? A bottle, not even big like this, Mr. Speaker, will cost $500 in some parts of the region. Mr. Speaker, these concerns... Mr. Speaker, when it comes to essential, you can imagine the cooking gas cost 3 times as much as that on the coast. In fact, I spoke recently with a resident who lamented that gasoline now costs $2,500 per gallon. Filling a car, Mr. Speaker, will cost a shocking $40,000. It is no wonder that the mining industry has suffered so much that the output has contracted by 2.5% last year. The poor performance, of course, Mr. Speaker, despite all of that, you can believe it that gold prices increasing over $3,000 per ounce, $300,000 per ounce, $300,000 per ounce in 2022. If the government had implemented the opposition's recommendation on the cap of fuel, Mr. Speaker, it would have safely guaranteed that we'll get more production in gold. What a tragedy. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind this House that the government of Guyana earned approximately $60 billion of unexpected oil revenue from the same high oil prices. Yet, that also, Mr. Speaker, could have assisted in depressing the price of gasoline. Region 8, Mr. Speaker, has been hurt by a contraction in one of the primary industries and the painful effects, Mr. Speaker, on food prices because of higher fuel prices is having a strain on the ordinary citizens. Mr. Speaker, no wonder why the price of a bread that is transported into Region 8 costs $1,000. Mr. Speaker, this budget comes at a time when the country can boast of how fast its economy is growing. However, despite all these resources, it can't improve the lives of the ordinary citizens of the region. The PPP never talks about inequality because it likes that. It believes in its elite and friends, families and favorites. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, if you want to doubt that, come to Region 8. Mr. Speaker, the PPP likes to say that it's a fair party, but I have good news for you. One does not discriminate, one which does not discriminate in the award of contracts, license. You come there and you find it, Mr. Speaker. Other government assets are distributed by that so-called, should I say the word or should I skip it? the Vice President. And you know this two-friend thing? He gets all the support, Mr. Speaker. Who gets all the support? Mr. Speaker, we are still to hear what law empowers a vice president to provide any form of government assistance on the basis of friendship. Mr. Speaker, most Guyanese are not Mr. Jagdew's personal friend, vice president's personal friend. Does this mean that because we are not, or those people are not the friends of the vice president, they shouldn't get support? Mr. Speaker, nowhere is this attitude more prevalent than in Region 8, which is being treated as it belongs to the family and friends of the elite PPP supporters, and I can vouch on that. Mr. Speaker, I must stress PPP elites because the average person who gets contract there, who gets place to stay, are members of that elite group. For example, Mr. Speaker, a certain board member uses that authority to guarantee contracts in a certain direction, to guarantee job opportunities at a certain location. And I can talk about that because I once sat on that board, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all the benefits they get, but they give back nothing to the community. That's the kind of tomorrow we want to build, the kind of prosperity. Not Sally Phillips. Moreover, according to a colleague, Mr. Speaker, this year's budget, if we are to divide the total sum, that is that budget figure that was given to us last week, Monday, by the population of this country, every citizen can at least get $1 million. Mr. Speaker, my sympathy goes out to the families in the more remote of remote areas of Region 8. Mr. Speaker, those families have not felt the impact of the relief on tax measures in the year 2020. Neither was it felt in 2021 and also in 2022. And now we are getting another budget and it will not impact them. Where I live, Mr. Speaker, there are people around there and there are people in more remote parts of that community where they only, I'm talking about Campbelltown, I'm talking about in the mountains, where they go to the creeks to get their supply of fresh water. So I cannot see, Mr. Speaker, how this tax relief on water will benefit them. Mr. Speaker, in the region we do not build buildings like these that will require steel, but yet we're expecting to benefit from steel for building of homes in construction. It's a far cry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to public works, and I'm glad, I'm happy, I'm seeing the honorable member, the one and only. You could recall last year, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member recalled a contract for a road because he spent the total volume of the contract. He paid for a whole road, but could only get half a road. Up to this day, Mr. Speaker, the road is still not fixed. Mr. Speaker, during the 3 years before the no confidence motion in Madhya, 1.8 million was invested in internal roads. And he could, sorry, the honorable member could attest to the fact that he walked on those roads. And those roads got gutters. And the other one that is incomplete has no gutter. And further, I said internal roads, Mr. Kwame McCoy, honorable member, 1.8 billion. And that, in that process, some wooden bridges were converted to concrete bridge. The one from Wrong Turn to the airstrip is still to be completed, Mr. Speaker. And monies were paid. In fact, when it comes to the lapidary in Monkey Mountain, Mr. Speaker, which is a major economic venture for indigenous peoples, we are very concerned as to the state of affairs of that investment. Similarly, coalition remedied the massive and very costly Cato Secondary School after the PPC had incompleted. Mr. Speaker, the building was unsafe and could not have been occupied. Cato was a national embarrassment, and that we fear it is. There might be others that the PB will reproduce this year. Let's see Christchurch Secondary. I do not use state funds to move around, Madam Honorable Minister. In this contrast, Mr. Speaker, with the advances we brought in the region, like introducing access to potable water, as this was done at Paramakatoi, a water catchment, Mr. Speaker, was constructed and equipment installed, but as usual, Mr. Speaker, the comrades, the PPP comrades of this house and the install regime oversaw the collapse of that facility. Sad. Mr. Speaker, what has happened to the sun-dried tomato project in PK? This created self-employment to farmers and further employment for processors. It was a landmark project which brought in revenues for the village. We believe in growing businesses, Mr. Speaker, and business opportunity where we see products that have great potential. The PPP only believes in crony capitalism, Mr. Speaker, where nothing innovative is ever developed. Last year, Mr. Speaker, a very distinguished member of this house publicly stated that government paid for a whole road, and I alluded to that earlier. He's right there, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member. Mr. Speaker, our roads are on the fact. Sometime I was going into there, and before you get to Mango Landing, I had to assist to pull a truck from the hole. And on this count, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, our roads are unbearable.
Honorable Member, before you continue to tell us about these roads, you will need an extension.
Thank you. Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude.
Proceed, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to regional education system that can get a flogging, the Gold Scholarship Program needs to be revamped so as to ensure that recipients can get a gadget and the necessary data so that it would not fall off the program, Mr. Speaker. We need more than just the hubs in the schools. We need them in the villages, and we need them now. We got the resources, Mr. Speaker. Between 2015 to 2020, Mr. Speaker, teachers are given gadgets to deliver the education. And therefore, I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, that our students be given the gadgets with the necessary data so they can do their SBAs and what have you, and do their research in their homes, Mr. Speaker. Some members of this House may recall that the APNU Coalition commenced the 5B program, a program that was terminated under the PPP. That, Mr. Speaker, what we are saying in that region, that because of this because we care program should have complemented that. Mining and logging, Mr. Speaker, brings a lot of revenue to this country. And therefore, The only tertiary institution we have there is a teachers training college. Never mind. But what you need is more than that. You need to get, Mr. Speaker, we need to get a tertiary institution for the training of our young people in the technical skills. Because all the boys and girls, if they need to get a technical education, got to come to either Linden, Georgetown, or New Amsterdam. Why can't we have it in the region? We got the money. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, and I have to, I will say a little more on this. Teacher accommodation. I was part of the teaching community, and I can say safely, Mr. Speaker, that family members got to stay in a room, in a two-room apartment. When you are not comfortable, Mr. Speaker, you cannot perform. We got the money, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we got to build comfortable accommodation for our teachers so they can deliver for the people in the region. Not only teachers, people in the health sector got to live at teachers' quarters. It's not fair. Well, coming to that, APLU had built a station by the airstrip. But you did not continue with that to make the police lives comfortable. Instead, you abandoned that and you went to build a fresh station in Madio. You need to also, Honorable Minister of Ousman, provide proper accommodation for our policemen so they will not collect gifts. Please, Mr. Speaker, I want to give these recommendations very quickly. We need to have better salaries for our public officers. They work hard to help prepare this budget. I must compliment them for that. You'll get it. Mr. Speaker, once these measures that we've recommended here is not involved with this, Mr. Speaker, I have a difficulty allowing myself to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Sanjeev Dattare.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. I rise to offer my humble contribution on Budget 2023. In these debates, and permit me immediately to extend congratulations to Dr. Ashni Singh. I wish to offer my warmest congratulations to the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and his team for their hard work in compiling the 2023 budget. Mr. Speaker, the previous speaker, Mr. Sinclair, made mention of the school in Cato. Maybe he can tell us that when was it completed? I can help him with the answer. It was completed under the APNU AFC. There were defects. The people there wanted to know why, although the school was within the defects period, there was no defects liability period, there was no claim to have it fixed. So Mrs. Sinclair has disappeared. Mr. Speaker, this budget is about growth. It has been a clear message from His Excellency the President, and as we have heard over the last 4 days from the members of Cabinet, this budget is about doing not only the big things, it's about doing the small things in each community and doing those things at every level. It seeks to build infrastructure whilst at the same time improving the lives of its citizens. It seeks to increase the standard of living of every Guyanese. In the short term, it hopes to improve that standard of living while at the same time taking care of what would be the longer term. So that's why we need to do the transformational infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, the short term, the adjusted salary for 5,000 healthcare workers, 9,000 disciplined service at a cost of $3 billion. The increase in the tax threshold from 75,000 to 85,000. 12,000, the cash grant increased from 25,000 to 35,000, which incidentally benefits approximately 214,000 children. This adds, of course, to the 5,000 uniform grant. The excise tax is reduced to zero. 17 billion that will cost in revenue collection. Reduced freight charges are extended for another year. Part-time work is extended and a further 10 billion is committed to that. Pensions are increased at a cost of 28 billion. Public assistance is increased. The mortgage ceiling is increased from 15 million to 20 million. Mr. Speaker, these projects and measures are based on sound economic policy, sound economic philosophy. Mr. Speaker, we all know that there could be several economic philosophies and policies, but these policies are set to build the foundation of our country and the foundation upon which our country is going to be built. It is about balance, Mr. Speaker, balancing the task of the immediate needs while providing for the security of future generation and future needs. Make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, Guyana is a poor country, trying to find its way with its resources to prosperity. The development of Guyana, Mr. Speaker, with this budget is underway. The allocation of resources is such
Welcome back to the budget update as we wrap up today's debate with our last speaker, who was none other than Mr. Richard Sinclair. But, you know, just before we got in, we were hearing, I think that is Mr. Dartadin, making a statement and a half. He just said Guyana is a poor country, while every other person who preceded him told us that Guyana is a rich country, and every report says that, you know, we have the fastest growing economy and all these things. But of course, they make these statements when it's beneficial to them to say they don't want to do anything. Welcome to the program. And you know, you gave your presentation just now. Your time seems very limited. I think for this afternoon period, I feel like something was happening there with the clock, especially when you're putting a licking on them.
Yes, thank you, moderator. Incidentally, that's correct. What I thought that the government's budget lacked was a vision for the ordinary people, not only on the coastline, but for those in the interior locations. And generally, the cost of things in Georgetown, the price doubles by the time you get into certain part of the interior, and then to move from one part to the next, that doubling price doubles again to go to another area. And therefore, I thought that some of the things that measures are giving as tax relief is not sufficient. And therefore, they should have taken into consideration these remote villages where the prices of things vary from one place to the next. I thought those are some of the things that is missing from this 2023 budget.
What you're saying there is something we discussed a bit earlier with some other MPs, because while Minister Kwame was comfortable to bring stuff that he claimed to buy wherever he bought it, forgetting that yes, it may be the cost here. One, the cost prior to this period, it was way cheaper, and two, when you go into these interior locations, they are sometimes triple, they are quadrupled in some locations in the price. And if you're the minister for the people again and all the people, you have to take that in consideration, as you were saying there.
Yes, Miss. You see, Mr. McCoy is a product of a No Child Left Behind, I would suppose. And therefore, he would think like that because he thinks as a collective. Mr. McCoy was a former student of St. John's College, and he also was sent to East Rhineville. And from there, he left school, and so he's a mouthpiece. And when he talks, madam, I remember clearly the book George Orwell's Animal Farm. So I suppose he's the squealer of Animal Farm. So you have to see what he has to say, what the government would like, how the government should be seen. But in reality, on the ground, is something different. Totally different.
You give some insight to your region, which happens to be region number 8, in terms of how you feel the budget will affect or not affect persons living in that area. Let's talk about that.
Well, madam, the thing is that I have experienced a cordial relationship with people in some villages, and I've spoken with lots of folks here, and they're concerned because there are people still living in these villages who would not know where the next meal is coming from, and they cannot afford that. And so I am saying, like I said in my presentation there, the tax relief for water would not benefit them because they will go down to the creek for their water.
Water, correct.
And then if they want to build a home, they can't use steel because the price of steel will not benefit them. All they need is timber, and timber is gathered locally. So even the price of fuel, there is no government distributing point in that area. So if there was government or they had put a cap on fuel and the cost of fuel, well, then that might have been a little more affordable, and some of these people may be able to eke out a living.
I mean, you've made the point that almost every MP sitting in the chair here talking to us made, is that this government seems not to have vision. There is no real plan. They're thinking in a circle. And again, because there is no consultation with the people that matter in regards to what are the measures that should be put in place to help them, you know.
Yeah. Generally, what government do is that they fly in with a plane and ship supporters from certain location with, of course, like I was in Maja when the Minister of Housing and a team went in there to discover housing and gold scholarship. They used a bus that was bought for the villagers to truck them into, which is all right, you can use it, but these are people who will only say yes. But in the final analysis, these folks are still faced with the harsh realities of bread and butter. This budget doesn't cater for that. Transportation costs to get into Maja has risen from $10,000 to $12,000, and taxi fares move from $1,000 to $1,500. So if a person with a family of 4 should want to take their child from where they live in Princeville to Maja, taxi from last year it's $7,000 one way, that person would have to pay the taxi to come, pay the taxi or walk. Transportation, so fuel price is not going to affect, it's not going to impact them. The cost of food stuff is going to be a challenge for them too. And I have spoken with well-known personality in that Maja area that can see clearly, well, what he had interacted with people here and there, and families at the middle of the day can't see where they will get things to put in the pot for the family. And I'm gonna be very sorry for the single parent or parents with families. Now, these are remote areas, and most of the folks might do a little farming, and then just substantive farm, a little farm just, and with the dry season or heavy rain, it's going to affect their crops. Now, this measure that the government is taking up, where they're going to go in there and just give a little handout here, a little handout, is not enough. Our people need more than handouts, and therefore I'm suggesting that the salary should at least be about $150,000 for even people in Madhya.
Minimum
Public
livable.
officer minimum about 150,000. Then also to go into the mountain, the prices are different. So those people should have a salary scale a little higher than Madhya. And if you go further the Monkey Mountain, higher still.
More challenges.
So therefore, government, when they are doing these budgetary consultation, they must go down to the people on the ground and consult with them. I have seen a consultation by a certain member who's a sitting member of this government here now, sitting minister, sorry, and he went with a just little movie dinner for two, after which he shared some people for people to sign it. Wow. And that is a form of consultation, and that was done also just before this Amila Falls project. And there was a question I asked, that how can this Amelia Falls hydro scheme benefit the locals of the area? And they couldn't answer. So that project was intended to sell power to Georgetown. What the folks in the area need is reliable power. They need cheap power, preferably solar power, and also like school-age children need to have like gadgets that they can do their assignments. I had engaged that Minister of Education some time ago about a child whose mother texted me to find out the possibility of having a laptop to do SB assignment. And that was there. She treated it lightly as a joke. So I went into that area. I took my personal instrument that was given to me by the parliament and take it for the young lady to do her work. That young lady is successful, and she wanted to come to get a technical education somewhere. But then there's none in the region. And that's why I'm insisting that we got the resources, the budget is big enough, they got the money, and therefore they can build technical schools in that part of the country.
Decentralization.
Right. Not only the local government. You need to decentralize the police, passport office. I think they have already gotten in there a national frequency, something, this thing that has to do with the standards be renewed.
Okay.
So we need other things to go there too. Just as GGMC is there, other things to do. Not when a person needs a thing, they have to travel all the way to Georgetown. It's very costly. And therefore you find people in these regions, they just come like every 3 months or 6 months to do shopping and go in because of the cost of travel.
I was just speaking to MP Dinishwar, who talked about the same thing. As we know, under the coalition government, they started decentralizing things like the immigration office and those kind of things. And we know that in some of the regions that the coalition would have opened those offices, there are still some problems. Now we're seeing people returning back to town to get those things. And what you're saying is right. It should have been decentralized. You decide to put it in other regions. The coalition started it was something that you could accomplish. Every region having their own, for instance, immigration office.
Yes, and you see this democratic, this control mechanism by the PPP is exhibited there. And so you would find they want to run the regions from Georgetown. And that's why they put a bully to squeeze the the democratic process that the APNO coalition established with this decentralizing process. And they don't really believe in that. They believe in the metropole. You must control things from a particular point from Georgetown down center. So and that's one the thing I find very challenging. And even in this budget, there is no measure for that.
Well, as we will be wrapping up today's program, you being our last MP for the day, I want to ask you, you know, with everything that you've said here, what you've seen in Parliament in terms of presentation, how would you sum up budget 2023?
It's not people-centered. It is not pro-poor, and therefore, to me, I see this whole budget as a budget just for the friends and families of the elite and the party elites. Contracts, family. I put my family there and attend the board. So that family guarantees every tender must go in a certain direction to a certain class of people, and that's evident in the region. So I feel this budget is a disaster. Personally, I feel it's a disaster. What needed to have been done there was that they take that back and revise it and come with a fresh budget.
You made a very important point there. You said that the PPP elites, because you know we've gone into communities that are pro the PPPC party, and we hear persons there giving the same complaint. It is just a few persons in the community that they are giving things to, and you know, although they say they're giving out all these different cash, especially when we talk about the farmers, when we visited Bushlat and these areas, it was just a small grouping of people, despite those areas are deemed, you know, pro the government. So that's very important to know. Their people are as well suffering, and cost of living affect every single citizen
in the country. And in closing, what I want to see is that this thing about control is evident with the PPP, and unless they free themselves from that, the development of this country is going to take a longer time to be achieved.
All right. Thank you so much, MP Sinclair, for sitting down with us and giving us a little of the breakdown of what you presented in today's budget debate. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Lucis.
All right, viewers, thank you for viewing the program today. We are wrapping up. We'll be closing off today's program with MP Sinclair, and we will see you tomorrow as we proceed to the last day of budget debates in the House. You do know that next week they will begin budget estimates from next Monday, which is another part of the budget engagement. But budget debate will end tomorrow, where we will see three speakers from the opposition side. I do believe, I know that the leader of the opposition will be speaking tomorrow. I think Ms. Cathy Hughes will be one of the speakers tomorrow. I don't quite remember who is the other person. But of course, tomorrow morning, we will update you on all the speakers, and we will take you through the pace like we did today. Do have a wonderful evening and join us tomorrow.